Well, welcome back. This is your third time on the podcast.
It is, man. Yeah. Second time solo. We had I can't remember what that guy's name was that was here not last time. I don't know.
He was really angry.
He was really angry.
Really
pretty
angry.
short.
Yeah, real short.
Definitely not as good looking as either of us, but but no, good. One of my favorite humans.
That was a great podcast.
That was fun, man.
That was very fun.
That was fun. That was a fun few days.
It was, but because he came on earlier, and we're talking about Ray Cashcare, former Navy SEAL. I think I legally have to say that.
I'm just gonna say I think that's part of his legal name.
Yeah. And anyways, he was real reserved the first time he came on.
Was he?
Yeah, he was like very not PC, because I don't think he even can be PC, but he definitely he pulled back on some things.
Yeah.
And I like it when Ray
just goes.
Yeah. Dude. Let your inner light
shine. For sure.
Anyways, I used the other podcast as kind of fuel because people said some things in the comments.
That's right.
And
you came and started poking him right from the get-go. That's right.
The bear.
Yeah. See if we could let that guy loose. He's a brilliant human though, man.
Yeah,
and we were talking at the gym.
There's some great clips that came out of that podcast with him
awesome.
getting all fired up.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved it. I actually did that to B too. There was a couple things that I said. Do you remember that, Mark? He was talking about somebody's fat gelatinous titties. And the
Beaudreau sauce?
Yeah. He was talking about the Uber Eats, like you sitting there with the tracking your fucking burrito.
That's funny.
Anyways, so Matt, for those that don't know, listen. So if you're listening, if you're wanting to know more, there's a whole podcast. I don't know what episode it is, but just search his name on the Always Forward podcast, and that was specifically about your 11 family rules, which we're going to talk about.
Yep.
But that was a really full podcast, just breaking those things down.
Yep.
And then the other one was just a general podcast with Ray and you, because you guys were in town, and that was fun as well. But the point of this one is we're going to talk about education. But before we get into that, like, can you just educate me on, like, how the hell did you, like, you're 43 years old.
Yeah.
How did this happen?
Yeah.
How did you become this guy?
Yeah.
How did you become one of the best speakers that can stand on stage and speak with the entire world, which is I will second that. The guy can speak on stage like nobody's business.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
And anyways, but yeah, where did this all start, man? 18-year-old Matt, go.
18-year-old Matt was not a whole lot different than 12-year-old Matt than 22-year-old Matt. Like he was kind of a moron who was really good at playing the game of school just so he could do sports and girls, that was the same thing, man. Yeah. I always tell people it started at 4, realizing there was a game of school. So I knew that early.
You really did.
I remember being 4 years old in kindergarten and being sat at a table, and they said, "Okay, you're in the red group." And I went, "All right, whatever." And they're like, "We're gonna do some reading." And I went, "Okay." And so we sat down, and I saw them organizing everybody else, and like blue group is over here and green group is over here. And I remember looking and going, "Okay, well they need the most help in reading. That's the group that needs a little less help than them. We're the group they think has it most dialed, just judging by who's at the table." I remember that at 4 or 5, whatever I was in kindergarten.
So what do you think, where did you think that came from?
That pattern recognition. So you thank you for those words on the speaking too. I always tell people I'm very good at a few things and I suck at everything else, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. So I just lean into what I'm good at. Speaking on stage is something that is a very easy DNA sort of deal. Pattern recognition is another thing that I've been gifted with, but it's also something that's interesting, and you put those two things together, and that's a dangerous combination, right? It's interesting because I start to look and go, okay, well then what does this mean? I started thinking ripple effects as a young person, right? And so I remember very clearly picking that up and going, okay, so there's somewhat of a game going on. So I'd start to take a look for that game playing out, and it was right about 8 years old-ish, 3rd grade, where I went, oh, this school thing's actually really easy. Like it's really easy to get all the teachers to like you, to get the A's. Like there's actually kind of a system to it. So I can just do this system, and I'm not going to have to try. I'm not going to have to really put in the effort.
I was so opposite. I was so like, I figured out there was a system, and I'm not going to be part of your system.
And that's.
But I was like I was just the total rebellious.
But dude, the parents want that version. I'm telling you, freedom demands the version you just talked about.
Yeah, but it causes so much conflict.
It does, because adults are so trained, right? Yeah. Because really, we should be cultivating that understanding that, well, Like I'm going to go ahead and carve my own path, right? Is what education is ultimately about, which is what we're going to get into. I mean, that's it. That's what education is ultimately about. I fell in the trap that so many young people do of going, okay, well, cool. I'll play this game. And the problem is you play that game for long enough, you don't know how to do anything else other than play that freaking game, right? So 18-year-old Matt had gotten his straight A's, had gotten his really high SAT scores, was good at sports, was good at girls, and then came out and went, now what? Like, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about myself. I'm not that, I'm confident playing a sport, confident, cocky talking to a girl, not really confident. I haven't earned anything, like I know how to be the big, the swinging PP or whatever. So I'm going, all right, well, I guess I'll go to college. That's what everybody else does. It was the same thing. 4 years of straight, even 4 years of straight A's.
So even identifying the system, you still fell into the system.
I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And everybody said you had to go to college, right? So I didn't know.
So how did you graduate high school? Is it good grades?
Straight A's.
Straight A's.
Oh yeah, straight A's through.
Crazy.
Straight A's through. Easy. No, and no work. I'm not that smart. There was no work involved. I just figured out the system. I figured out the system of taking tests. I figured out, right?
Man, not me.
And I figured that system out. Like I could read and
total CD student.
See it, dude. Yeah. And I think it's freaking, like, I look at it now as somebody who owns schools and starts schools and has worked with the highest institutions of, higher learning I look at that and go, man, that's probably a good sign. Which I know is so counterculture, but it's probably a good sign. But you figure out, like,
I just think I didn't put any effort. The reality was I didn't put any effort into it because I didn't think it was important. And it wasn't important to me.
Right. Well, to you, right?
Yeah.
Education is wildly personal.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem.
And that's what's crazy is education itself, knowledge is important to me.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Schooling.
Yeah.
Is different.
It was
schooling
just
is the
I
same
saw it as
thing,
a huge
same
waste
time.
of time.
Correct.
I was like, this is just a waste of time.
Correct. Which it is. And and everybody listening has either asked it themselves as a student or they had somebody in their class who asked the teacher, why do we have to do this?
Yeah.
Everybody has
Everybody's
that.
had that.
Everybody's had it. And
Mark,
the teacher.
Have you asked that when you were?
Did you ask it or did you have somebody in school who asked that question?
I definitely asked it.
For sure. Why do we have to? So what was the answer that you got? Yeah, from the teacher. Like, if you asked that question, what did you get? What was the response like?
I don't know. Maybe something like we need it or something.
Yeah, you said because everybody.
And you graduated college too, is right? With what?
Bachelor's.
In what?
Sport management.
That's right.
Yeah. So you get those responses like, well, everybody needs it, or because this is just what we do, or because it's going to be on the test, or it's because there's no actual like, well, here is actually how this is going to apply to you, because you actually can't have that conversation.
So you graduated high school.
So go to college.
A's, and then how fast did you go to college? Straight out?
Yeah, I went right away.
For what?
Yeah, right away. Get better at sports and better at girls. Like that was it. I graduated with a degree in kinesiology because I like sports, not because I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So
your degree is in kinesiology.
Yeah, in kinesiology. Yeah, and then so their degrees in kinesiology. And again, I learned.
I laugh
some things
because I know about I know what you do and what a little bit about your career. It's just so that's why it's funny.
For sure.
That your degree is in kinesiology.
Yeah. And then today, what happened? Like you and I were working out, and you're like, "Hey, man, look, this is how this stuff is connected."
I have no degree in kinesiology.
You have no degree, and you helped alleviate some of the back issues that I've got this morning, right? So again, I mean, we're just it's these obvious pictures that everybody knows. We just don't want to emotionally. Just go, okay, we don't want to recognize it, So
I was having that conversation about education, or not education. I've had that conversation with my coaches and Allie and a bunch of my friends about experiences versus certifications.
Oh yeah,
because people, like with the Agogi and different things, like, what's your certifications? I'm like, I just roll my eyes. Because I'm like, I know so many people with certifications that don't know shit.
It means nothing.
It means nothing. I was like, well, how about combined years of 80 to 100 years of experience?
Sure. Well, it's an inherent logical fallacy too, and like an appeal to authority, right? So people go, okay, well, what is your certification? How much school do you have behind that? And what I like to ask, if I know a little bit about their background, is I might say, okay, well, are you Muslim? No, I'm not Muslim. I go, well, why not? Why don't you listen to an imam who has gone to school for a long time to learn about this? Well, because I don't agree with the ideology. Bingo. So if you don't agree with the foundational
That's a
premise.
real way out there thing to ask,
but
that brings it right back to it.
It brings it right back to it, because it's like, look, you can put if you say you put your weight in the amount of time somebody spent in something. The problem is you can find dueling ideologies that have spent equal amount of time.
Right.
So you're not really putting your weight in that. You're putting your weight in whatever the premise is that they're saying in the first place, right? That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. So if you don't agree with that premise, it doesn't matter how much school somebody has in it.
Yeah.
I don't agree with where they started in the first place, so it doesn't matter. You can be the ninja of all of this over here, the ultimate god of the world as far as this goes.
Right.
If I don't agree with where that started, I don't care. So the certifications, I'm with you. I mean, they don't mean anything. We have this credentialistic view it's silly.
That's just essentially just made up.
It's made up.
Yeah.
100%.
Total
100%.
make-believe.
There are people that have spent a lot of time and years in things that matter, for sure. But again, it's wildly personal. So I get to decide if that matters and if they've taken steps and spent time in a direction that I want to also go.
Yeah.
Then it matters.
Are you talking more along the lines of like, and we'll get back to you in a sec, but
No.
you're down the road. Are you talking more along the lines of like a doctor or a surgeon or something like that?
And even that. So a surgeon, I mean, great. I have no ability to perform surgery on myself, and right. So I'm gonna acquiesce. I'm gonna go to that.
Right.
We use doctors as blanket term. Well, there's all kinds of different doctors, right? And so, I mean, what the recent COVID BS, you saw all that as it is. You had a whole bunch of doctors who were saying one thing, a whole bunch of other doctors who were saying other things.
Well, they were silenced.
And they were silenced, but they still had the same amount of schooling and training, right?
Right.
So then it's like, okay, well, what else is at play here? Where did you get your training? Where are you looking at your research? Where are you? So, I mean, that's the whole thing is people need, and it sucks because people want to just abdicate responsibility for what they know to somebody else who's the quote unquote expert without vetting the expert, without going down the rabbit hole themselves, without doing the research themselves. Everybody wants to push schooling out to somebody else and just tell me what to do, what to think. That's where, and that's gross.
Immediately, as soon as you said like, just tell me what to think and what to do, I'm like immediately turned off. I'm like, I'm out, bro. Like,
100%.
And that's the rebellion. That's the
100%.
rebellious spirit in me. I'm just like, you're not gonna tell me what to do.
Me too.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
So you graduate. You were in the system, even though you saw it was a game.
Yep.
You graduate college.
Yep.
What happens then?
Graduate college, turned down a job at the White House.
No shit.
Yes, sir. Secret Service.
What?
Yeah. So I did that. So my entire senior.
Why did you turn it? Well, first of all, hold on.
Yeah.
How did you apply? How did that all happen?
So 9/11 was my senior year. Of college.
Okay.
Right. So that was my final year. So I September 11th. That was fall.
You're 2 years older than me. Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I graduated college in 2002.
Okay.
So 9/11, 2001. Right. It's my last year of college. So I wake up to that whole thing. And so I started getting well, what do I do that's, that was kind of the turning point of like, let's do something.
Already.
I know you were. You were already out doing some things, right? Yeah. I was playing all the games in school.
I was playing games already.
You were playing? Yeah, it's true. Good point.
Games.
We were playing different games.
Yeah.
So, I just went, okay, well, I started taking a look. Military. Do I do military? Is that where I go?
I'm really surprised. I mean, I guess because of the pattern stuff, but knowing you, I'm really surprised you didn't go military.
That was what I was leaning towards.
Yeah.
And I was talking to the Marine Corps, and I was looking at OCS, and I was talking to, there was the whole Buds billet at the time where you could get that directly. You could go directly in, and so those were the guys that I was having conversation with. But I had this loose family friend who also had been in the Secret Service for a long time, and this is. There was a movie that came out too called 1600 Pennsylvania with Wesley Snipes. Dude, it's not a good movie. Yes. Right. So I had that. I watched that movie and I'm like, dude, that'd be kind of rad. Maybe that's
cool.
it. Maybe that's it. I'm going to apply and see what happens.
Totally not reality.
Totally at all. Right. Yeah. But Wesley Snipes is awesome. Let me apply and see what happens. So I submit my application to Secret Service and actually submitted to Marshal Service too. And Secret Service got back to me right away, and they're like, "Yeah, if you want to start the process, like let's start. Okay. We're gonna hire a uniformed officer." So I went through almost my whole senior year. I was going through the background and was driving from where I went to school.
It's a hell of a process.
It's a process, and driving from school, and I was meeting at the office in Sacramento, in downtown Sacramento, and doing my interviews there, and going through the whole thing. Right. So I get the conditional offer. All I have to do is graduate. All I had to do is get my degree, and I'm good. So I got the conditional offer in like March, and I just had to graduate in May. And then I was talked out of it by that Secret Service agent. He's like, you don't want to do this. This is not where you want to go.
Shut up.
Yeah. He's like, you don't want to do this.
Why?
Integrity. He's like, there's a lot of things that I can't tell anybody, and that drives me nuts. He's like, do you want to have a wife and kids someday? And that's something I always knew that I wanted. He's like, yeah, it takes you away from them more than you want. The integrity piece, the lying, some of the things that you have to do just for, he's like, you're not going to want it, man. And he went down the rabbit hole a little bit of, there's just some BS that's there, that the public sees this behind closed doors. It's this.
That's super weird.
And he's like, that's hard.
Why would he talk you? Like, your whole job is to get people there.
Yeah, he wasn't the recruiter side. He was the, I've been in it for 20 years side.
Okay.
Right. And so he's just like, I know you. I don't think, and it wasn't like, oh my God, stop. But it was like, I don't see the alignment. And for whatever reason, I went ahead and went, okay, all right, cool. Sounds good. So then I graduate and I got no job. Like, I don't have, I had I was bouncing at a bar with a bunch of other guys that I fought with, and I was managing an apartment complex, and I was working at a bank. I was doing all these things to put myself through school, but I don't have anything, there. So, actually ended up walking through the mall. It was the old school, walking through the mall and the old school approach of like Abercrombie and Fitch. Like, hey, do you want to work here? I'm like, I don't know. What does that mean? They're like, well, do you have a degree? I'm like, I just graduated like 2 days ago. They're like, you can be a manager. I'm like, cool. What does that pay? Done deal. Sign me up. So start working these odd jobs, man.
It pays $12 an hour.
It really wasn't a whole hell of a lot more than that. I just knew, okay, management position, it's something that's at least starting me in a path, because I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. Right. But I'm super grateful for it, because it actually, I ended up helping a gentleman well, first of all, I met my wife there, which was pretty rad.
At Abercrombie?
At Abercrombie. Yeah. She worked there too. So that's where we met. So we developed a friendship. Shit. Yeah. So I'm very thankful just for that reason alone. Yeah.
Isn't our past wild?
So wild, dude, and that's
like, as
part
you
of
get older, when you look back at it, the weird little things, and you're like,
but that's part of the point, man. Yeah. Is schooling tells you it's a step 1 through 10 process, and it's not, man. It's not. You got to get out of that. You got to get out of that mindset of
your whole life, all this potential in your whole life is just like out there.
It is, and it's not about finding the path as much as it is forging one. Yeah. Right. And so even there, so I'm working at Abercrombie. I end up serving this. I'm just trying to do the best job I can do. I end up serving this guy. I don't know who he is, but at the end of it, he's like, man, I like your vibe. I like your style. I think you need to come work for me. And his name is Mark Mastroff. He's the founder of 24 Hour Fitness. Okay. Right. And he's like, I want you to come work for me here in the Bay Area at our flagship club. This is like our headquarters club for the entire thing. He's now partial owner of the Sacramento Kings. I mean, there's just uber, wealthy dude. And he's like, come work for me. So I end up working at 24 Hour Fitness and running some of the gyms there, and then running some of the. How big
was 24 Hour Fitness at the time?
I mean, it was a monster. There was hundreds of clubs across the country. We're at the flagship club.
It's kind of weird. My perception of America during that time is like zero.
Really?
Because I'm in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
So like my world was completely different.
That's true.
The things that
That's
happened,
true.
Like I have no idea really.
Yep.
I remember there's movies that I missed and like things that have happened.
Yeah.
I was just. Yeah. Out of 12 years in the service, I was gone 6.
Yeah. So you don't have any context for a whole big chunk.
There's a big chunk of life that is my perception is just very skewed.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that
which is cool though, because it gives you also perspective.
Yeah, but a very different one.
Yeah. Very much.
Anyways, so they're huge at this time.
They're huge. Okay. Yeah, they're monsters. But what ended up happening is, again, just by doing the work that I could do, whether I loved it or not, just doing the best job I could do, the next kind of recruited sort of event was one of the members there who's like, hey, you should come work for me at Stanford University.
Shut up.
So that's how I ended up at Stanford. So I always tell people like
from Abercrombie to 24 Hour Fitness to Stanford.
And it was all the same. I wasn't anything special. I like people. I try to serve people to the best of my ability, and I try to take care of them and do the right thing. And I mean, that's really what it was, right? And they could see a young guy who was working hard and was respectful. And at least if I wasn't enjoying the job I was doing, nobody else could tell. Yeah. And I was just bringing this kind of the time honored traditions to the table. So
is that something your parents put into you, or is that something you just kind of
more coach? Mom a little bit, yeah, for sure. Yeah. The anti-dad a little bit, right? Kind of going against that a little bit. One of the smartest people I've ever met, but did nothing other than make some poor decisions.
Yeah.
Just out of his own, now that I know him, now I have nothing bad. I had nothing against the man, but just his own fear of his own inadequacies, and so I knew I didn't want to do that. But coaches too, martial arts growing up, having coaches instilling that work ethic was a big
When
deal.
did you start martial arts and kickboxing?
6. Yeah.
6 years old?
Yeah, 6.
Oh,
Started
okay.
a little bit of Taekwondo and then into kickboxing early. Dennis Alexio was a world heavyweight champ at the time. He played, you ever seen Kickboxer?
Mm-hmm, of course.
Yeah. He's Jean-Claude Van Damme's brother.
Oh, no shit.
Right, that guy, yeah. So he was a world heavyweight champ. He's from my hometown. So
Okay.
got in early and started kickboxing then too. And played basketball, football, and all that kind of stuff too. But
How'd you pay for college?
worked my ass off, 3 jobs at a time.
You paid cash? No
Yep.
loans?
Yeah, a little bit of loans.
A little bit of loans.
A little bit of loans, but I didn't take anything from my parents. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
All right. So,
So-
what did they hire you at Stanford for?
So working in the controller's office, which is just, that's the controller's office is
Did
the
that
hub
tie over
of
from,
wherever.
from 24-hour fitness?
Not at
No?
all.
So you weren't doing any
Not
sort of
at
that
all.
work?
But the guy knew I had worked in a bank before, and
Okay.
was just like, whatever. We need people that are good interacting with the
Same thing,
same
basically.
thing. But it was interacting with everybody, right? So I'd had to interact with the professors, with the administration, with the parents, with the students, because they're all utilizing the controller's office and paying bills with fundraising. So it was the hub that everybody interacted with, and he just liked the way that I interacted with people.
Yeah.
Right. It was that. And so it was starting out right there that I got reminded of that game that I knew at 4. Because then I started in working with like the admissions office too. You start seeing, okay, where's the meritocracy? Isn't it get straight A's?
So
Do
what
extra
year,
cre-
what
right?
year was this when you showed up to Stanford and started doing this work?
2000.
Oh, so fast.
2005.
Wow.
Yeah, 2005. Because I was like a year and a half with each one of the other companies. Yep. So it was like 2005. And you start to see what's going on. I'm seeing all these really, really smart kids who are broken. They're really smart, but they're broken. I'm like, how do you guys not fall down more? Like they're just having all kinds of freaking issues, right?
Yeah.
I'm seeing that. I'm seeing the game of admissions. I'm seeing who's getting admitted. And I'm like, wait a second. I thought you had to get straight A's, get all your ducks in a row, do extra community service, and then it's like, here you go, right? Well, no, there's a multi-layered game that's being played. So I start seeing all that going, okay, well, this is not the game that everybody thinks that it is. And that's also where speaking ended up starting too. We ended up starting a corporate training for the whole university. We started it while I was there. And so I became the first corporate trainer out of the controller's office at Stanford I just got to go kind of create my own curriculum, create my own talks, create my own speeches on how I thought I could help specific departments. And so that's what got me in front of people, which I didn't know was going to lead to
Did they push you to do this, or did you just say no?
I kind of threw it out there, kind of went, hey, we're kind of going in that direction.
We can do this better if everybody understands what's going on.
And I'm like, what if I put this together and we just kind of rock and roll and see what happens? Which I didn't know was going to lead to stages, but I knew I enjoyed being in front of people and educating. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then naively, I'm going to go fix the school system because I see what's going on here. So I'll go fix it from the ground up. And so my next job after that was a public school teacher. So
how long were you at Stanford?
3 years at Stanford.
3 years.
3 years. So 2008, jumped into public schools.
So you went and then you went to become a public school teacher at what age?
I was 28.
28 years old.
Yeah. 27, 28. Yeah.
You're already with your wife at this point.
Yep. We both were working. We were actually both working at Stanford.
Oh, so you dragged her over too?
So, yep.
Did you drag her to 24-hour fitness?
No, no. So she had just graduated. She's a little younger, so she had just graduated. That was her first job out of school.
Okay.
So we're both working at Stanford, and we used our Stanford income to qualify to buy our first house in the Sacramento area, which if you don't know California, that's about 3 hours away. So we used that income, cart before the horse, bought the house, moved, and then went, guess we better find jobs. But that's where I went. I was like, I know I can get a job as a public school teacher. So I went and got credentialed and got my.
What were you teaching?
Phys ed, and then math, and then science. But but the problem was I was teaching children, not the curriculum, not the subjects, right? I was teaching them. We were in if you know the Diaz brothers, right? Nate and Nick Diaz, the fighters,
yeah.
Right? So I was in their kind of hometown area teaching, right? It's a rough area, trial by fire. These kids needed mentorship. They needed guidance.
You were teaching kids, not the curriculum. How'd that go over?
Not well. not well. I was what I call creatively insubordinate, for sure. And I got brought into a superintendent's office. He's like, okay, we have a problem. You're not doing what you're being asked by your site administrator. Yeah. Like you're working with these kids, but we need you to teach. Like we've got these tests that they've got to take. The funding goes here. Let me give you a little bit of how this works. So this is what we need you to do. And you're not doing that. The problem is
it wasn't even about the kids.
It has never about the kids. And he's like, the problem is you're the favorite teacher there of the kids. You're the favorite coworker of everybody there. Your administrator actually really likes you. The community likes you. He's like, so we're not going to fire you. He's like, but I need you to bend. I'm like, oh, fuck. The older I get, the less that's my thing.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like,
it does become a little harder to
really
bend
does,
as you get
man.
older. Yeah.
Really does. So again, naively, I'm like, all right, well, I'll go fix it. I'll run my own school. So I'll go get my admin credentials so I can be a principal. So I become a public school administrator, and you realize it's very much money, power, politics. It's not about the kids at all. You actually have you actually have less power as a principal.
Where were your principal?
Same area.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. So, and there was so I left six-figure job.
How long were you a principal for?
Not even a full year. Couldn't do it. Left a six-figure job to go over to, again, naive, thinking private schools were going to be mostly different.
Oh, this is my thought process too. Like until I met you, I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, well, I even thought, and not to get into it, I don't want to get into it too soon, but I even thought your schools were the same thing. I was like, oh, well, it's just the same thing. They just do it better. Mm-hmm. Kind of like what your thought process is. Like, well, I'll just go private. We'll do it better.
Right.
And it's not. It's the same.
Better version of something shitty. Still shitty.
Yeah, right. It's still wrong.
Yes.
The method is still
wrong. The
wrong
thing is still the wrong thing. Yeah. You can do the wrong stuff more efficiently. Like,
shit, man. So you went private school. And
private.
What'd you do for private?
So I taught for a year so I could get a grip on the kind of the community. And it was the first thing because it was like literally I left and the school year was about.
So how on a personal level, how frustrated were you?
Extraordinarily.
Going from Stanford to teaching to a principal job and now to of the whole system, like how personally, like the conversations at home with your wife, like how frustrated were you in that time in life?
Extraordinarily frustrated. And I didn't do a good job I didn't want to put that on her. We were about to have our first kid. Okay. So I did not do a good job of expressing it to my wife. Uh-huh. I just went, hey, by the way, this whole thing is shitty and I've got to go. She was very supportive.
Yeah, obviously.
Right. And she's like, okay, I trust you.
You didn't communicate.
But I didn't communicate well the why.
Where you were and your thoughts.
Where I was and what I was seeing play out. But I had also started to dive into the origin story of schools at that point too, right?
When did you start to really communicate your issues with everything? And obviously, because you're on a freaking journey. Yeah. Right? This is all a journey.
Yes. Yep.
So when in your relationship or when in this story did you?
It was another couple years afterwards. Really? Yeah, it really was. Because was
like a breakdown moment, or were you just like, hey, we got to talk, or it just kind of naturally happened?
It broke her down because I hadn't communicated well, and so it was all of a sudden I was just like, and just freaking barfing it all out.
So ladies and gentlemen, don't do that.
Do not do that. Walk through that process, right? I was in my head, I'm like, okay, I want to save her from all of this kind of stuff because it's my own thing. I'm going to figure this out, and I really was still,
and that's a problem that men do.
It totally is. Yeah. It totally is, and I was still hopeful that if I went into administration at this private school, I could change that was going to be my avenue to create something good. Because at that point, we've got our own kids. And I'm like, I need somewhere for them to go.
You got in as a teacher.
Yep.
And then...
we went to administration there that next year.
What did you do in administration?
I was principal, or vice principal, and part of the administration team. So there's three of us that were running this, a big K-8 private school.
And still...
oh, it's
even worse.
It's even worse. And I was working in ganglands. Now I'm working in Disneyland. It's an upper socioeconomic place in California. It's one of the wealthiest areas of California.
It's just about money.
And it's just about money. It's about the same system. It's about the same kind of politics. They just have more money, and the problems are the same. The system is the same. The drugs are different, right? The drugs are more. You got weed over here. You got some more designer drugs over here, right? But it's the same stuff, man. And more importantly, I got more on the why school looks the way it does and why people are so attached to it. And then it became an integrity issue. Once I knew what school was designed for, it became an integrity issue. I could no longer do what I thought was hurting children.
Before we talk about that, how long were you an administrator at a private school?
4 years.
Took you 4 years to
finally say, see, I got to go.
Do this.
I got to go.
How old were you when you quit?
34.
Family, everything.
Oh, yeah. The whole shit. At that point, I had 2 kids.
It's balls, man.
At that point, I had 2. I went from the 6-figure public school teacher to a year of $31,000.
What the fuck?
At this private school.
Hopefully your wife was making
$31K. She was not working.
Oh shit.
With our first kid. And I went, I will figure this out. I promise. Like, that's talk about just a freaking rad human. She was like, all right, man, I trust you. I trust that you're going to figure this out.
And in California.
And in a wealthier area of California. So we did that for that year. There was a slight, there's a salary bump as I went into administration, but it wasn't huge. Yeah. But it was like, okay, I've got to go. It's an integrity issue at this point, and there's nothing that's going to happen. I'm not going to change the minds here. I'm not going to make the kind of income we need to make here. There's an integrity, and I'm not aligned here because I already know what we're doing now. I can't send my own kids here. I gotta do something else. I got to figure this out. I got to build something.
It's kind of like where I'm at now with my second generation of kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, the kids
got to do something. Yep.
Got to do something.
Yep.
Because that kid will never see the inside of the classroom.
That's right. Yep.
So, all right. So 4 years you quit. Now what?
Yeah. So quit. So I know I want to build. By
this point, you've had the conversation with your wife.
By this point, I've had the conversation, and that was where it was tough because I just kind of barfed out and went, hey, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're either going to, I think we might need to, I think we're going to need to home educate. And to her, she still had homeschool, right?
Like did.
Like you did.
Yeah.
Like most people who are listening to this right now even just me saying homeschool, they've got a preconceived notion of what that is, what that means, all the other.
It's the same thing you do at home.
The same thing
system.
You do it at home, but now the parent is the teacher and you've got to retrain yourself on all these things, right? That's how everybody's thinking about it.
Yeah.
So that's how she thought about it. And it was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Right. So she didn't, that's where that started to happen because I hadn't explained well what my version of that was, or that I was looking at, okay, well, how do I launch something else? Yeah. But again, I promise her I will take care of us.
Did you quit before you had this all mapped out, or did you have something mapped out before you quit?
Yeah, I kind of had an idea of a couple places I might go, but nothing. I just knew it was the right thing. Oh, and I just trusted myself to figure it out. Yeah. Okay. Call it balls or call it stupid. It's probably both.
A little bit of both.
Yep, for sure. So, as soon as I did, it was like things got hyper. I was backed into I remember talking to Randy Couture one time, and he was talking about getting into a couple of like street fights with Chuck Liddell around, right? And he's like, I'll tell you what. He's like, the one thing about Chuck, he's like, in those areas, what he'll do is he'll put his back into a corner. Part of it is so he knows nobody's coming up behind him. Yeah. He goes, but the other part is, he goes, once Chuck feels like he's in a corner, he's just going to go down swinging, and people can't handle what he's throwing out there, And so proverbially, I was putting myself in a corner too, and I was like, let's see what you're made of.
The whole thought process of like putting a gun to your head.
That's it.
Yeah, like whatever.
Time to get at it.
I need to make this happen. I've gun to my head. I got to make it happen.
I need to make it happen.
The trigger's going to get pulled. Yeah.
Bingo. So simultaneously, I started taking a look at, okay, what do I want to build school-wise for our kids? Oh, and hey, how are we going to make money in the process? And I had already been speaking on some small stages, just talking about the problems that I was seeing and what I wanted to do with schools. So I was getting invited to do like these little small, educational conferences and things like that.
Who was inviting you? Like, the people that were interested in the different.
The universities for a while. I'm not invited back to universities now.
After they heard you talk?
Hell no. But for a while, the universities.
Somebody in the back of the room was like, no.
Yep, no more of this guy. So like universities and other school districts, I was going and doing like PD for their professional development for their teachers and trying to get them to look at things a different way and trying to get them, fired up. But I was also honing, skills from the stage, right? So I end up going and doing a talk in South Carolina for a bunch of college professors. One of them, as we're leaving, she says, hey, I'm going to go work at UC Santa Cruz. I'm taking a new job at UC Santa Cruz. One, we're going to be throwing a TEDx. I'd love to hear you come talk about what you want to do in education. And I actually think as you're doing that, there's this small group.
Is that the one that's out there, like public?
TEDx. There's a bunch.
Okay.
There's a bunch, but that one was one that was coming up.
I know
she
you
was
have a
gonna be
big
part
one
of that.
out there. I
So
came
we've
across
done
that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've hosted them now. I mean,
Okay.
I've done a couple of talks, and we hosted a big one too. And so she's like, but as you're doing that, I really want you to research. There's this guy in Texas who started this MBA program called Acton MBA, and I hear he's going to do some things with some K through 12s too, and it sounds like it's right up your alley. I think you should take a look. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I started taking a look at that, and that connected with what I wanted to do on the educational side. The TEDx got me connected with this research firm that was trying to shift things in corporate culture, and they're like, I like your style. You want to come take a look at our research? If you like it, we'd like to maybe test you out, put you on some stages. We'll pay you for it and see if you like it. And that turned into, okay, well, now I'm doing 70 keynotes a year.
Holy shit.
Making a ton of money doing that, which gave me the money to support the family and start building the things that I wanted to build. And so I was doing them both simultaneously. I was building schools while I was home, and then I was on the road and flying in. I mean, I would fly into North Carolina. When I was living in California, I'd fly into North Carolina, take a quick nap, get up on stage in front of 3,000 people, rock and roll, jump right back on a plane, and go back home and go straight to work at the schools. And, you know, I worked 7 days a week for about 7 years straight.
Wow.
Rocking and rolling. So.
And that's how you end up at a ranch.
And that's how we end up
with nobody else.
With
over there.
nobody.
With your family.
No. Yeah, that's how we end up out here.
For
And
7 years.
that's right, man. Yeah. That's right. And so now we're out in the middle of nothing.
So, okay, so go back. You basically work these jobs and talking to make the money to build your first school.
Correct.
Is that how?
That's correct.
What was that first school?
So we were part of the Acton Academy network. It was Acton Academy Placer.
So you didn't start Acton Academy.
Acton Academy started as an MBA program by Jeff and Laura Sandifer.
Okay.
They were
not a school for.
You know, it was an MBA thing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And it was a new way to be an so like you look at MBA programs, you know, you get your Ivy League, like your Stanfords and your Princetons, your Yales and all that kind of stuff, right? You got all these guys that get their MBA. If you had to guess, 5 years out, graduating with an MBA, how many of these guys, percentage-wise, are running a profitable business? Got to guess?
Me?
These guys are Ivy League guys, Ivy League MBAs. 5 years out, how many of them
are running their own business?
That are running their own business that's profitable?
10%? 4%?
4. The Acton's MBA, it was about almost 70.
Holy shit.
Right?
Why?
That's the question. Why? And the answer is pretty freaking simple, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. During the process of getting their MBA, revolutionary idea, they actually ran businesses. They didn't talk about theory of running businesses.
They went and did it.
They went and ran businesses.
So there's experience.
Experience.
They just got the experience.
They got the experience.
All the failures while they're in school, everything.
It wasn't a grade to chase.
And they had people to rely on to solve problems more quickly, to collapse time so they could
in real time so they could become more profitable. That was it.
It's like
right?
It's a business coach.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly what it was. So right, so that to me was like, okay. So I went out there. They had just gone, hey, I think we want to do something on the K through 12 side. They didn't plan on doing any kind of expansion. I went out there and I said, okay, I'm going to rock this in California, and then I'm going to help blow this up like worldwide. We're gonna get rocking and rolling on this. So I started launching something that was associated with that, but I started helping other entrepreneurs launch these as well, so that we could get to like 300 like there are today.
Wow.
But then traveling, the speaking part, you know, I ended up like my clients were Amazon, Google, Netflix, Microsoft, Lockheed Martin, U.S. Air Force, Caterpillar, Wendy's. I mean, you name it. American Eagle was a big one. Like you name it. I was working with these organizations.
Did you ever work with Abercrombie?
I never did. American Eagle loved it that I had never worked with them, but I worked with American Eagle, right?
That's why I asked the question.
Totally. Yeah. So funny, man. But it was great because I got to hear, I got brought in because they were it was all around generations and generational behaviors, leading the younger generation. What does that actually look like? How do you find and recruit good young people? These young people are coming in and we kind of want to fire them all. We want to get rid of them. So it was helping bridge that gap. So I got to hear what they wish they saw from young people so that I could bring it back to our schools and give that to the young folks.
So before we get into those schools,
yeah,
let's go into this. and I've made some videos on it.
Yep.
Which you actually, I think, shared, which I was like, oh, sweet. I actually got something right.
Yeah.
Matt shared it. But let's go back into history. Let's talk about child labor laws. Let's talk about how did the public school system, like how did the, you know, the little schoolhouses that you saw back in the day compared to, I don't even know what you called them, but like, you know, little neighborhood schoolhouses that all the kids from all ages would go walk up to the thing, and they'd spend a few hours in school. Yeah. And there'd be one teacher for all of them. And then from that to essentially an organized, federally funded or state funded public school system. Yeah. And, you know, give me in your words, give me the history of what happened. How did this all become, how did we get here today?
Yeah. I'll give kind of the high level. But what I would like to do is give people resources to go take a look and read this for themselves too, right? Because I'm going to give the high level as far as I've seen it and understand it. But there's a gentleman named John Taylor Gatto, Gatto, passed away a couple years ago. I highly recommend anybody go read his work. He is the foremost historian for how things became the way they are now. John Taylor Gatto, Gatto. He passed away a couple years ago. He's got some great books, Dumbing Us Down, Secret Underground History of American Education, Weapons of Mass Instruction. He's
That's a good one.
He is so good, title. But he's so good, and he lays out the history of, guys like Horace Mann traveling to Prussia to see what's going on. It's a Prussian military design, more about getting blind obedience from the population and adherence to what the state says, and making sure that you always are obeying what the state says. And for them, it started because they lost a war to Napoleon, and their takeaway was,
this goes even way more deeper.
It goes
way deeper than what I already even.
They lost to Napoleon. And so their contention was, well, the reason we lost was because our soldiers started to think for themselves. They started to see some inconsistencies. They started to see things were wrong. They started to see that, some of the things we were telling them were propaganda. So we need to develop a system to train our young people so that by the time they get into the military or whatever, they don't question. And it also is going to allow us to divide based on classes. So we can take a look and go, okay, who are the academically elite that we can funnel into positions of power, right? And we can entice them. Who are those that are smart enough to obey well, but they get these marks that basically say they're going to be a good soldier or a good employee? And who are the people that are essentially fodder, right? Like there's a class distinction, right? So that's why they had developed that. And so Horace Mann goes over, sees that, and there's dueling beliefs on whether or not his views were altruistic or not when he wanted to bring this back. And I can see both sides of the coin. Some people say he brought it back specifically to help our government to do that exact same thing. And some people go, no, he just wanted to make sure that there was some sort of free service to all young people. I don't really care. The point is,
but why would you go to get that system?
Why would you go get that system?
Out of all systems, why would you
go get that? Right, and
unless you wanted to produce that.
That's right. And and by the way, the first PhDs that this country produced from the university level too.
What year is this?
This is like late 1800s.
Okay.
And so we bring that system over here. The first PhDs also come out of that system to start trying to implement that at the university level too. And then we start getting funding from people like Rockefeller, right? Not very shortly thereafter.
So he didn't really start it.
Rockefeller? He went, ooh, I like where this is going.
I'm going to blow this up.
I'm going to blow this up. Right. Okay. He didn't start it. Okay. He's like, I'm going to put in the funding, adjusted for inflation, 1.27 billion today. Right. That. I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. A nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. Yeah. Right. And what are you going to?
He said that.
He said that. And somebody said, well, what are you going to? How long are we going to have them in there? We're going to have them in there for about 12 years, which again came from a short-term study. It was a meta-analysis of a short-term study to go, okay, well, how long, and to really get people into a habit that they're going to have a really hard time breaking.
Why do you think he said that?
Because he wanted to have control. Wanted to monopolize.
He wanted worker bees.
He wanted worker bees. he wanted to be able to monopolize. He did the same thing with the pharmaceutical industry, by the way.
Yes.
Right. So
I think I made that video as well.
Did
Mark,
you?
Did
Okay.
we talk
Good.
about that?
Good.
No, we haven't talked about that one, about how he basically he demonized. Correct me if I'm wrong. He got a bunch of people to write papers because before him,
Correct.
all medicines were basically herbal.
Right.
We were still herbal.
Exactly.
So he got a bunch of his people that were paid
Yep.
to demonize herbal medicines.
Demonize that.
While his people were reproducing synthetic
Synthetic
drugs
stuff.
based off of the herbs.
Petroleum-based stuff
Yeah.
that was synthetic that could now be patented. You couldn't patent the herbal stuff, so it's going to deem all of that, and we're going to villainize all that. We're going to deem it all alternative.
Yeah.
Right. So schools, same thing. It's like let's get this nation under
He's
control.
an evil genius.
He really was.
Like he's a genius, but it's
brilliant.
brilliant.
Just for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Right. And so we start putting in these compulsory measures, and you start looking, and it's interesting because you had Sunday school and stuff before that, but kids would go for a couple hours. Other than that,
Because that was the
They were at
original, like the schoolhouse, the neighborhood schoolhouse.
neighborhood schoolhouse.
They worked at the farms. They worked for the family businesses. They did all that stuff.
and this was a couple hours through the church, usually on the weekend, right? Do a little bit of reading and writing, usually religious based. And then the rest of the time they were out working.
A little bit of math.
A little bit of math.
And
That's it.
Yeah.
They're out working. They're out exploring. And interestingly enough, before compulsory education,
What is compulsory education?
meaning you have to go,
So like what our
right?
current
For what
system
our
is.
current system is, right? Before this, free and compulsory, those are dangerous words to go together. But before free and compulsory, right?
It is very.
Those are
it's
very dangerous words
yeah.
put together. The
Why would you not immediately question that? Like I
Right?
would imagine the people in like the 10s and the 20s would be like, wait a minute, it's free?
yeah, and we have to.
And-
That's an interesting kind of freedom,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm always wary of freedom that
I don't have to pay for.
I don't have to pay for, and has to be forced upon me, and I also have to force it upon somebody else.
Yeah.
That's an interesting kind of freedom, you know. But before that, literacy rates had jumped in some places in the country. You'd seen these literacy rates. Parents had started to take more control of that in their neighborhoods and started to make more of an emphasis on that. Literacy rates, even in some of the worst states in our country, you know, in like some of the southern states, they had jumped up to like 81, 82, 83%. In some of the other areas that were a little more quote unquote educated at the time, you were talking 97, 98% literacy rates.
For which program?
Just in general,
Okay.
with no compulsory schooling.
Oh, so this is
Literacy rates were off the charts.
So why was this happening?
And as soon as we invented compulsory schooling, the literacy rates have gone down ever since.
So what
We
was
have like
happening?
a 79% in this. We started teaching people how to read, which seems counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but we started teaching it from a school standpoint
So why were they so high back then?
because parents read to their kids.
Oh,
It's
it
not.
was just a book. It's like
It was
you-
just the books, and the kids weren't distracted by a bunch of other garbage. They got excited about it. It made
Other
sense.
stories.
Nobody was saying, "Well, you've got to do it by a certain time,"
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
didn't matter if you were 8 and when you learned, or 10 when you learned, or 11, and they didn't put something around it like you got to regurgitate certain things. It just became about the story, and it became something that was cool to connect to, and then you had conversations around that, and you're like, ooh, adventure, and I can relate to that, and what would I do if I was that character, and what would I, right? So it was cool. So people began to read extraordinarily well. Compulsory schooling, the rates have gone down ever since. In our country right now, you know, we're far below 80% literacy in this country
That's crazy.
for people over 18. Yep. So
Wow.
we were off to the races.
So what year was this? Probably
Like 19, yeah, it was early 1900s, 1926, 27.
Because the school system started in the 20s, right? That's when he started.
That's when he started.
That's when he
pumping
started.
money into it to make sure that everybody was going. Yep.
Okay. And isn't that also when the child labor laws? Did he have any effect?
As far as I understand, yeah. As far as
the way
yes.
the way that I read about it is essentially they enacted. Now I'm not saying that that children weren't being abused. It's not my point.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, from what I've read, he lobbied for child labor laws to be put in place so that children would go to his school system.
Correct. Bingo.
Okay.
Yep. That's it. And so kids were disconnected from the real world,
Right. And put into
for
a
their
system.
own good.
And put a system, for their own good. If we haven't heard that for the past 3 years,
Right.
Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So freaking mind blowing. And then, you really think about that time, we're talking over, 100 years.
Talking 100 years ago. Right.
Taking them away from their parents.
Bingo.
And getting them taught by someone else.
Exactly. And remember that Prussian system, the whole thing was the state needed to prepare the citizen, not the family. Yeah. The state needed to prepare the citizen. So we did the exact same thing, repeated over here. It was about 100 years ago. And the problem of that is, at this point, neither of us know anybody.
What's the problem with the system?
That it's designed for slavery. And I use that word very, very intentionally. It's designed to make slaves. It's designed to make obedient slaves. There is a complete disconnect from school and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
There's things that look, this is why it's so dangerous, is there's things that look altruistic, right? Evil is not something that looks, is not, the most dangerous things aren't something that looks on its surface obviously evil, right? It goes back to the whole, whether you believe in this or not, it goes back to the whole, think about the serpent in the garden, right? He didn't come in, he wasn't this devil with the horns with a big oogity boogity and I'm coming for you and I'm going to make your life miserable.
Super
That's
scary,
not, right? Super scary, because that's
that would be scary, and they'd be like, no, I don't want that.
How easy is that to turn away from, right? Yeah. Real evil comes in and says 90% of the right things and then just twists it a little bit, so that you start to get that one degree of difference.
You just drift a little bit.
You just drift a little bit, right? And two planes are taking off at the same time, but there's 1 degree of difference over the course of a long time.
They're very far apart.
They're very different locations, right? And so that's part of the problem here. Is it sounds good. Okay, well, kids need to learn how to read and write. Yeah, of course they do. Of course they do. We don't need that, but of course they need to. So the system itself, though, is completely separate from anything that we do in the real world. You start out at an academic, with an academic push at 5 years old. From a developmental standpoint, there is no way in hell we should be pushing academia. If they're excited about it, they're interested in it, you can expose them to stuff. But pushing academic things and starting to push a timeline goes against the blanket development of these young kids.
Their kindergarten is essentially horseshit.
Kindergarten is horseshit. Right? Unless it is just completely like a play-based sort of deal and you let them go, Montessori, they've got opportunities to take on responsibilities and manipulatives and make some decisions. I like what Montessori does with that. That's great. But from an academic standpoint.
I think you and I, we were talking with Allie and something about Montessori, and you said, yes, we do utilize some of that, but not all of it.
Yeah, well,
it felt like when you commented on it, and we never dove into it. You were torn on it.
Well, I'm torn on it more because Maria Montessori was a genius. I'm torn on it because of her methodology being bastardized in our country. So you have some that utilize the name, but are still a lot of them have started to be publicly funded. Right?
Jeez.
And so it fucking changes everything.
Right back into the
same system. Right? You're exactly right. So they still say Montessori and they'll give an illusion of Montessori, but it's not actually there, right? So there should be no grading, no pushing of academia involved. So you've got these.
That's a wild thing. No grades.
There should be
a school with no grades.
Right? And then it seems kind of crazy. But again.
But if you put me in there, I'm thinking about me as a child, right? I'm more in.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah. 100%.
As soon as you put grades on me, I don't give a shit anymore.
Right.
It was weird. I was like, this isn't important.
Yep. It makes sense. Well, it's disconnected from how we think as human beings. And nobody operates based on grades in the real world. You operate based on performance and results and the feedback that you get from others in your relationships in the real world. Is it
working or is it not working?
Is it working? Is it not working? Yeah. Are they willing to pay me for it? Or are they not willing to pay me for it? Is this getting the result that I want? Is it not getting the result that I want? Right? That's how the world actually works. Yeah. The arbitrary grading thing is garbage. So you've got these disconnected sort of ideals here. They're disconnected from other people of their own age. Right, which is inherently a weird thing in society. You've got all these; you're grouped together forever by your date of manufacture, right?
Well, not just that, but inside your group of date of manufacture, you're also grouped in red, blue,
and you're also grouped in there, right? Exactly, based on
what you were saying,
based on your specific performance in certain things that, again, arguably don't freaking matter,
Yeah.
Right. So you're grouped based on that. You're in these arbitrary things, which automatically creates a weird social thing because you're automatically revering the people who are older than you.
Yeah.
You don't have a voice in what you're doing from day to day. So you look down upon the people. It's why there's gangs in prisons too, right? It's a safe space, and it's a way that they get a voice, right? You can exhibit power.
Yeah, it's control.
Right? It's control. You don't have control over your daily life, and nobody likes that.
Yeah.
That goes against our DNA. So you find this group, and then you find a way that you're going to exhibit your control and your power, right? So you got gangs. That's also why you have bullies in school, right? So you get these groups together, and they start to create cliques because you want a voice. You want somebody to listen to you. You want some freaking power, right? And so they're playing all of these things out. You have the ultimate authority who stands in front of you and tells you what you're going to do and when you're going to do it and what you need to quote unquote learn, what you need to regurgitate back, right? It's all much ado about nothing. You're not actually diving into things. You're just regurgitating things. You're being, it's all specifically to go towards test taking so that funding can come back in so we can play this entire circle over and over and over again. But the whole point, the agendas are one thing that are coming in, right? That's one. But the system itself just makes you go, all right, I'll just sit back. You just tell me what to do, when to do it. And that becomes your habit. That becomes your mindset.
By the time you're 18 years old,
you're fucked.
You're fucked.
You don't get out of that.
Especially if you go to college.
You don't get out of that mindset. It's almost impossible.
So you do this because the government says, you do this because doctors say, you do this because your boss says, because you follow the rules.
That's it. And what does the government tell me I have to do now?
You get rewarded if you follow the rules.
And I'll give you a little carrot, right? You go take your shot, you get your free Krispy Kreme donut. And that's it.
That's how
we are a wild.
So talk about that. Talk about the evolution of that system over the past 100 years.
Yeah.
Where it started, how it was when it started versus where
yeah. So it's been this.
You look at it now.
Yes.
And you share a lot. If you don't follow Matt on social media, please do, because he shares a lot of this information. So talk about that evolution.
So you've got this slow burn now that has taken place, right? Because what happens is you've got now that we're 100 years in.
Yeah.
Everybody that's alive has, 92% have gone through that same kind of system, whether it was public or private. They went through this. It doesn't matter. It's the same system.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody has gone through that other than the weird people who stepped outside of it, right? And which again, they're the alternative herbal, they're the alternatives over here, these home educators, right? They're the alternatives. They're the weirdos. They're the whatever. So you got to villainize that. You got to make sure you villainize that.
What do they say? What about your kids' social?
Jesus Christ.
Like, what is your kids? Homeschool kids are weird.
Yeah, for sure. Right? Yeah, because there was no weird. Did you see any weird kids in public school? Because that must, right? Because that must have fixed everything. People are like, well, if my kids homeschool, won't they be weird? If you're weird, probably, yeah. If you're a weirdo, you probably have weird kids. Whether they're public school, private school, homeschool, it doesn't matter. That's part of it.
Here's a fucking news flash. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with weird kids.
And whatever. Who defines weird?
Yeah.
Right? Weird and a good human who's serving other people and getting after it. Yeah. Or weird piece of shit falls in line, gets their straight A's, but is a total douchebag, and is stressed to the max and anxious and on, all kinds of medication. It's a ridiculous thing. So this is slow burn, man, because what happens is now you got all these people that go through it. They're being told that they're being conditioned. They go, this is what's going to ultimately get you the job. This is what's ultimately going to lead to success, because you say the right things that sound right. Well, education is what is going to lead to success. That's true. Schooling is not education, though. That's the problem. Schooling's not the same thing, but people have those things conflated. So they go, yeah, of course.
Schooling is not education.
It's not the same thing. Schooling is a religion. This is a religion for you to follow. This is not human development. It is your religion to follow. So now that we have this religion to follow, and you've been told, you ever tried to get anybody out of a cult?
Because it's a belief pattern.
It's a belief system.
Yeah.
Right? And so even if you took somebody out of a cult, if you and I went and if we found out there's a cult around the corner going on, and they're indoctrinating these young people, and they're creating all these slaves, and you and I we get a wild hair up our ass, and we're like, all right, we're gonna go save one. We're gonna go fucking save one. We're gonna go pull them out, right? And we go pull them out, and they're like, thank you, like you saved me, like I'm out of this cult. Okay, but they've grown up 12, 13 years in this cult. We can go take them and put them in the environments of the lives that you and I lead. They're still gonna want to do cult shit.
Yeah. Because
they don't know any different.
Yeah.
Right? Emotionally, logically, we're going to go, look, this is how the world actually works. And they're going to go,
programmed.
yeah, but they're programmed. And they're still going to want that. So now you've got all these people who've been programmed through this religion. And even if they
safe, right?
because it's safe and everybody else does it. So now I can turn around and put my own kids in it too, because I have a religious belief that's here. I'm going to put them in here. And because everybody else around me conforms in that way too, I don't have to deal with all of the issues that come up socially from my parents who went to school and say they turned out fine, or from, this employer over here, or from my friends down the street. I want to prove that I'm a good parent too. And the only way I can do that is get the Harvard bumper sticker to put on my car so I can show everybody else that I did the right thing as a parent. And that's where we're stuck.
So was this, now you're talking about where the system came from, which was where again?
Prussian, so
Prussian.
Germany.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Homeschool's illegal there, by the way, still.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that says something, doesn't it?
Yep.
So, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So, was this a multi-generational plan to get us to where we are at today, or was it a natural evolution of that system and the people in charge of that system?
Yeah. It's a little bit of both from my understanding. So you've got the Rockefellers who's, front loading this whole thing, right? With a little bit of
he was thinking
he was thinking generations ahead.
That's
generations ahead, and I've got this, these workers, and I'm going to eliminate competition. And
I mean, the proof of that. Here's the simple proof, not to skip to a finance thing, but the proof of him thinking about multi-generations is watch how he did his finances.
Oh yeah.
And the way that he organized, where he put his money, how he formed his trust,
that's another thing. I mean,
he was
that alone
100% planning a multi-generational phase line.
That alone. So you start talking about the whole Jekyll Island thing. That alone is something you never touch in schools.
Right.
You don't talk about. First of all, you don't talk about taxes. Period. Second of all, you don't talk about the fact that guys like Rockefeller actually created a separate tax system. There's 2 tax systems in this country. Both are legal. One's for the informed, the other's for everybody else.
Yes.
Almost everybody plays this 1040 system. There is a 1041 system that's completely legal.
We've been switching systems.
Hell yes.
Because it's education.
That's part of it.
As soon as you get educated, you get what is the word, like financial literacy, essentially.
Yep.
You're like, wait a minute.
Completely. Why was I never taught how to play this game?
Yeah.
Right. So yes, he was part of putting that in place as well.
So, okay.
So he's got that whole thing that he's front loading there. So there's the part of that is that natural evolution. But as you're putting all these people in place in these, these superintendent roles in these government positions, and a lot of these guys early on got their PhDs from these same universities that started with the same whole Prussian view of like, let's get everything back towards state control. What you end up happening is you have these teachers unions that by about the 1950s are essentially taken over by people who very much believe the state should be raising your children. It's a cradle to the grave plan is the name of it.
What was the jump there? Like, what was the reasoning behind that?
And that I don't know. I read God. I don't know if Gatto even dives into that at all. And I'm sure there's resources on it. I can't speak intelligently to it. It's just right about the 50s. That's when the unions got taken over by, what people would look at it and go, okay, well, that's more of a socialist or communist sort of point of view. Mm-hmm. But it's the state needs to take over.
Did you watch a movie called Amsterdam?
No, sir.
No? Mark, did you see that? No? Oh, you guys got to watch that movie. It's basically a, what do you call it? Like a fictional movie about real world things happening around World War II.
Mm.
And Robert De Niro plays, I guess the fake version of who made Smedley Butler, and how these group of CEOs in these top corporations tried to get, because they had overseas manufacturing in Germany, they had all these things happening, these like businesses that were profitable during the war machine was turned on, right?
Yeah.
So they tried to get Smedley Butler to be the voice of them, to motivate all of the veterans to essentially create a one party system. so they could have more control and be
Yep.
more profitable.
Yep.
And that's when he wrote War Was a Racket.
Got it.
And anyway, so the movie is a completely fictional story, but it's based around that timeline and what they were doing with. So not only that, they were funding these basically castration clinics, and for like the lower, you know what I mean, so they could control populace.
Yep.
And anyways, it's a wild story.
Amsterdam.
Yeah.
All right.
The movie's called Amsterdam, and it's about a group of basically a group of veterans that came out and became a lawyer and a doctor, and then somehow they get wrapped up into this shit with the agency and a couple other things, and then the general gets involved. But not to give it away, but at the end of the movie, they show Smedley Butler's public speech about what was trying to get done, and how they were basically they were trying to pay him and motivate him to be their spokesperson to create a dictatorship in the United States, all backed by corporations. And of course, they never said what the corporations were, but like, if you're a smart guy, you know history, and if you read War Was a Racket, you can kind of paint. You can put two and two together and figure it out. So that's an interesting time that you said during the 50s, post World War II, that this kind of methodology was starting to get pushed down. So anyways.
That's exactly right. And many of those organizations, by the way, are
like the fact that we're talking about this. This is what that old saying is that those that do not know their history are doomed to repeat it.
For sure.
And it's like, why are we not teaching this stuff?
Hello.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly right.
Right. Anyways, all right. So 1950s, they're going into into this stuff. So go ahead.
So they've got essentially control of the unions at that point, and it was game over. And they started laying out a plan of how to start to narrow the focus at schools in general. You didn't have a lot of private schools at this point, right? It's public schools, pretty much it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're going to start to narrow the focus. We're going to start to take some of the intellectual freedoms away from the teachers that we have in here, and we're going to start to narrow what they can do and when they can do it. And we're just going to do it slowly over time. If we immediately come in and start to standardize absolutely everything and take away all the intellectual freedom from these teachers, like, we're not going to get people that are, that are doing this. And simultaneously, we're going to make sure that we're getting women into the workforce too, because hey, everybody's got to have these two, person incomes. We can get extra taxes coming from that too. And we start to liberate the women so that they can go to work, and so we can get the taxes. And now of course, thank God we got public school. Thank God we have compulsory school, so everybody can send their kids there. You don't have to worry about it. Your kids are going to be fine.
Have kids. Don't
have
worry about
kids.
It.
You guys both go to work
for us.
Yep.
We will teach your kids.
We'll take care of your kids.
Like, when you paint this picture, it's like a very different picture.
For sure.
It's the same picture.
For sure. But it's a very different picture. It's really hard to see in the mix, because people will go, they try to emotionally figure this out, right? Because there's the logic to it, but they try to emotionally figure this out. So they go, okay, well, first, I know my kids' teachers, and they're really nice people.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah. Most of them are.
You were one of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Most of them are really good people. Most of them are there because of the right reasons.
Yeah.
Most people are in most religions
for the right
reasons and are good people,
yeah.
right? That's right. And they're going to be very kind people. It doesn't mean the religion they're associated with is right. It just means they're good people who are associated with this religion, right? So, and then they'll start to also do, well, I went to school and I turned out fine, right? So it's not actually a big deal. Well, that presupposes a few different things. One, that it's the exact same as it was. Again, part of this plan is to, over the long haul, start to narrow down what's actually being taught and what matters, right? So that gets us to where we are today, where it's a very, very narrow focus, and we're testing on this very narrow focus that we tell everybody has to start earlier and earlier and earlier, which means you just break somebody sooner and for longer.
That literally is in our notes.
Right.
It's like inadequate focus of real life skills and problem solving.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Right. So you get this very narrow scope so that everything else gets just completely disconnected. And as we're moving people down this freaking thing, we are able to now toss in all of these agendas too. And that was planned. Like, we can start to say, hey, it doesn't matter if you have dad in the home. We can start to talk about sexualization earlier. We can start to, this is part of it that was laid out in the 50s. And so you got all of this, you get people out here, but these people are presupposing that none of this is happening, that school looks exactly the same. And they say, I'm fine, assuming that they're fine because of school, not in spite of school.
Yeah.
And they're assuming that fine is a good goal. Who the hell wants fine?
Average.
Average.
I want average kids.
Mediocrity.
Yeah, I want mediocre
Fine.
kids.
If when you and I were hanging out, working out earlier, and I said, man, how's Dimitri doing? If you had been like, he's fine, what would that tell? I'm like, okay, man, what's going on?
Yeah,
what's happening? Why is it okay, man? How's it going with Allison? It's fine. Okay, what's up, man?
Yeah.
What do you right? Fine is a shitty goal.
Yeah.
I don't want fine for my life. I don't want fine for my wife. I don't want fine for my kids.
I don't want fine for my businesses. I don't want fine for
my business. I don't want fine for my health.
I don't want fine life.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Head on your headstone. Nick Kumalatos.
Everything was fine.
Fuck everything was fine. That's the worst. That's the most depressing. Like, that's the most depressing thing I can think of.
Right.
You know. So, those are those presuppositions, man, that people just can't get around. And so, you know, we've got this continued narrow focus by the government to just get people in line with this very small, very narrow worldview that is now very, very controlled.
So, okay. So current systems, you're basically teaching to the lowest common denominator.
Right.
Right.
Yep. A bunch of things that don't necessarily matter.
You're not doing
same team, same time.
Yeah. You're not doing anything real life.
Right. You're not connecting anything.
Right.
You're not. Everything is disconnected from its real application.
And that's by design.
By design.
Okay.
Physical fitness.
Oh, that's
is eradicated. Right. So we talk about
that because like you look at physical fitness and I love the clip of
the La Sierra High School.
Yes,
man. Dude. 1962 La Sierra High School. That is it. So
how did that get canceled?
That is it. Too many. Not enough funding for it. Right. There's too many.
They just snuffed it.
So
out.
you got to get rid of that. Well, what else doesn't get funded? Trades don't get funded. Anything that can help you get autonomy is gonna ultimately get snuffed. It's gonna lose funding because there's no testing around that, because there's no way to just maintain the focus of obedience around that. Right. So all the trades, all of that kind of stuff that can make you autonomous and give you freedom and sovereignty, all of those things are gone. Physical fitness, let's go ahead and get rid of that, because again, we can't test to that. But here's the other side effect of that. If we have people who are less physically fit, well, then they're also going to be less mentally fit. They're less likely to rebel in the first place if they're not physically fit.
I've been saying this for
it's 100% it.
If you're fat and overweight,
you're miserable.
And you're controllable.
You're controllable. That's right. And your mentality is
they want you
completely fat, lazy, out of shape, dependent. Right. Your health is miserable. So we talk about this whole.
You want to rebel?
Get yourself healthy.
Get healthy.
That's right. And make your kids healthy.
Everybody else around you will see you as rebellious.
Person. That's right. Yeah. And we're actually in a weird spot where a healthy family can be like, well, that's kind of weird. Like, what the fuck, right?
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Fucking world are we living
in? We're in the upside down, man. Yeah, we're in the upside down. Yeah. So get yourselves in shape, and you do that, and you start to eradicate with the mental health issues that we're seeing too, right? It's really hard to force
because it really does. Like it is a gateway. Like we talked about fitness being a gateway drug, because it is a gateway drug to freedom. It is a gateway drug for thinking for yourself, taking control of your own life.
That's 100%
disciplining your own life.
100% it is, and that physiology leads into mental acuity too,
and it goes against everything that they want right now.
Goes against everything,
or they have wanted for what appears like freaking decades.
For sure. Yeah. So if you're not physically healthy, you can't be at full mental health. So we talk about these mental health for these kids. We're taking away the physical part. Oh, but we're also telling you very early and often, we're jabbing them up with a whole bunch of stuff, and then we're telling them that something is wrong with them because they're at 5 years old. They don't want to sit and be bored out of their freaking mind. They're eating all kinds of processed garbage. They're chubby. They're out of shape. They've been jabbed up to the nines with all this other stuff that is driving their whole physiology wild. And then we go, there's a disorder here. We better get you. It's probably a methamphetamine deficiency. So let's get you on all of this shit at 5 years old, and you're going to be dependent upon the pharmaceutical system for the rest of your life as well. But we care about the mental health of our kids.
Thank you.
F off. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So okay, so you lose funding on any things that you can't test for, which kind of brings me to standardized testing, which I've always had an issue with. What's the real deal for standardized testing?
That's where funding comes from, and it means jack shit. I mean, that's really as basic as we can get. It means nothing. Who cares?
So why do they do it?
Because it makes it seem like you're doing something. Look, our kids are testing well. People don't ask the question. Our kids are testing well, and they know how to regurgitate certain things on a test, and people they're abdicating responsibility, and that makes them feel good, going, oh, okay, good. Then they're growing and they're doing what they need to do. It's as basic and as silly a freaking thing as you can think of. I went back and took a standardized test. So again, I got straight A's, passed all those tests, did extraordinarily well, had a great SAT score, all of those things, right? I went back a couple of years ago and took a standardized test for some of the parents at one of my campuses just to show them I took a standardized math test. And grade level is not a thing. That's not a real thing. We talk about it like it's a real thing. It's not a real thing. Do you make money at a 41-year-old level? What grade are you in? Isn't right? That's a weird question, right? Guess what? That's a weird question.
I don't even know how to answer that.
Exactly. It's a weird question for kids too. We've just been trained that it's a normal question and we should be able to answer it. They're not different, dude. Right? They're not practicing to be people. They're people with less practice. That's all it is. So you got this whole freaking we're talking like the standardized part. So I go back and take the standardized test. Again, I understand the difference between the 1040 system and the 1041 tax system, right? I understand how that whole thing works. My businesses do extremely well. I get paid a lot of money to go stand on stages for big companies. Like I've got, I can look at a P&L. I've got math down that matters, right?
Yeah. I feel like I have the math down that matters.
I think you do.
Or I have people that.
Or you understand how to network and you put it together a team of got the people that, that's it. I went back and took a standardized test and I was at a quote unquote 6th grade math level.
Holy shit.
And it's because I don't use any of that. I could go back and teach myself that if I needed to or wanted to for any reason. Yeah. But I don't actually use it. So I can't pass it right now.
Yeah.
Who cares? And who cares for the kids? It means nothing. It means nothing.
So much wasted time.
It's all it is wasted time. That's all it is wasted time. So it's it's standardized, and even, there's good teachers like, oh, well, no, it just gives you a snapshot of what. No, it gives you a snapshot of how well you play this game that translates to nothing.
So is there a society, a country, a group of people on a even semi-large level that's done this right?
Finland is as close as it gets from a country standpoint.
Really?
Yeah, Finland is as close as it gets from a developmental standpoint, from a country standpoint. They go as close to developmentally accurate as possible.
I don't hear shit about happening.
Well, and the kind of the irony is they don't focus on standardized testing, but they also always perform well on the best international standardized test. It's a byproduct of actual learning, right? They can still go through and they can still do well on the standardized test. So essentially, kids don't even go to school until they're about like 7 or 8. Right?
Oh, shit.
They don't go. And when they get there, those first couple years are more play-based and they're more about character. It's more about manners, right? It's more about doing the right thing. It's more about taking care of people. It's more about like societal function and how to actually function in society it's more about that, right? And then their focus is very project-based. They'll look at solving interesting problems, looking at collaborating together. There's not a huge emphasis on grades. They don't assign homework, right? It's just they're keeping inspiration high and allowing people to collaborate and solve interesting problems with character in the mix. That's really all it is. And so at about 16-ish, they're done if they want, and they can decide if they want to go to like a university track or if they want to go on to do trades or something like that. But at 16, as they're graduating, they kick the shit out of us in our standardized tests too.
So they've gone to school half the time.
Oh yeah, half the time. And in school has looked vastly different than what we consider school here. Their schools more closely resemble real education.
Are they all lumped together?
I believe they let some interaction take place. I think they mix ages a little bit. Where in some of those projects, you're going to work with some of the older than younger, depending on what you're doing. Yeah.
What has that done for the country? Like, how does that affected country overall?
That's a great question. And I don't know.
I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, so we get rid of the public school system. Like hypothetically, let's just create this like
for sure, because it won't
hypothetical
happen.
world,
Right.
right? It'll never happen.
Yeah.
We get rid of the public school system.
Yeah.
We actually go education, get rid of standardized testing, and we
Right.
go like, hey, real world experience, things that are going to make great humans, great Americans.
Right.
What happens to the country?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that changes the game. So then the question is it all because, what happened in Finland, but is it all because of school? Because you can argue, okay, well, it's different because you got this homogenous population. What do the marriage rates look like? What is the availability of a father in a home? Right.
Yeah.
All of those things start to play into all of this too. Right. So there's
Mark,
all of those.
you look that up.
There's all of those things
what's divorce rates of in Finland comparatively, and then like how many
the percentage of fatherless homes.
The percentage of fatherless homes. That'd be interesting.
Because that's interesting. Because you're talking about our country right now. It's like 25%. If you're just looking at the totality of the country, it's like 25% of homes without a father. You start to look at various ethnic populations, and that goes even higher.
And then you start looking at crime. We've talked about this in the past.
Correlated.
Like it's almost every single time father's home.
Totally. Almost every single time. Even if the father is a total dickbag, there is evidence to show that at least if he is in the home, there is a better outcome. Yeah. Even if he's a dickbag, which unfortunately we've got a bunch of those too. Right. And so and
I'm a statistics of that. I have fatherless home.
Right.
And 2 felonies by the time I was 13 years old.
Yep. Bingo. It's not
wouldn't have happened if I know for a fact it wouldn't have happened the same way.
That's right. That's right. Guaranteed.
Yeah. So the divorce rate in Finland is 12.3%.
Okay. It's 12.3. It's like 50 out here.
Is it really?
Pretty damn close. I think so in America.
Percentage of single family parent homes is 12% as well.
Wow.
What's America?
Divorce rates?
Yeah.
The same thing.
It's 2.5 per 1,000. So
you have to do the math. 330 something million.
Yeah.
Surely somebody has an answer out there.
It's always a multifaceted. It's a multifaceted.
They don't even want they don't want the information out there. They're like, just look over here.
Just
don't worry
cut
about
that down. But I mean,
15%.
15% fatherless homes.
No, divorce rate.
Divorce rate. That seems super low.
It does.
That was last year.
That seems super low.
Yeah.
Like almost everybody I know is divorced.
Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, I hope it is 15.
Yeah, that would be great.
I hope it is. I hope I'm wrong on that. It really is.
I
know I'm not wrong on the fatherless home part.
Yeah.
I know we're not, which is unfortunate. So there's all those things that always plays into it.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, it's a big multifaceted issue. And then schools aren't going away in the first place. So
yeah. So here's, before we move on to like the right way to do things. When we first talked, it was funny because we talked about Steve. We did the Squire program here last year.
Yeah.
And in November, it was November 5th. This year it's November 4th here.
Mm-hmm.
There's still one in Chino Hills on July 15th. Just go to squireprogram.com. Check that out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a father and son, a single day event, ages 11 to 16. Change your life.
Highly recommended.
Yeah. Anyways, so we did that. Steve met you. Was that the first time you met Steve?
We had chatted a bunch. That was the first time we met face to face.
So you guys chatted while you were here.
Yeah.
He went back, pulled his kids out of school, started his own academy.
Yeah.
Like
just like that. He's like,
because I asked you, I said, well, what about us? Because my thought process was this. Okay. So Matt's program is just essentially the same thing, just at home, just better. Yeah. Like you said before, shit program at home, shit program at school. It doesn't matter.
Totally.
Shit.
Same.
And then I said, well, what about accreditation? What about your high school diploma? What about all this stuff?
Yeah.
And he's like, you mean
all the game?
It's all made up by some person.
Correct.
And that kind of blew my mind because I was like, I was still programmed to think that this random person still has authority over my children, authority over this whatever.
Right.
And it's like, it's all just made up.
It's all made up.
All of it.
But you're trained to look for ways to obey.
Fuck, man, that it almost pissed me off that you unlocked something on my brain because I was still thinking like it needs to be like it's just a piece of paper that says you graduated high school with this much GPA and this you took a test.
That's it. And
that somebody made.
That's all it is. If you think about what schools do, and I'm glad it pissed you off too, because what it does is it pisses almost anybody off that stops to think about it.
Yeah.
But from my experience, it'll do one of two things. One, it'll either piss them off and they'll be like, okay, cool, let's go step into freedom. Or two, this pisses me off. And I'm going to go, I'm actually pissed at you for telling me that. And it's you. You're the end. Like I get the, like, you're a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like,
I can imagine.
100%. They're like, F you, especially from
everything.
teachers that are like, oh, you hate teachers. I'm like, nope, never said that. Actually, really big supporter. We need good, public school is not going away. And for some of these kids, you're the best human beings they're ever going to see because they're not going to have any other opportunity to go anywhere else. I want good people there for sure. Right.
No,
so I'm a huge supporter.
And like, yeah,
but it's that.
I was like, let's step into freedom. Like, oh yeah, it's all made up.
It's
100% all made up by some person.
That's right. That's all it is.
Who's to say that they have more of an education, more of a say?
All you have,
and especially when it comes down to your kids. So
right.
So hold on. So that's what it unlocked for me. Is one, first of all, I always have a say over my kids over anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've already felt that. But when you told me that, I was like, oh yeah. So why would I give this person the authority to create a piece of paper called a high school diploma to give to my kid, and he has to do these X, Y, and Z to make this happen, to get this piece of paper that you made up?
They're going to dangle that carrot.
Yeah.
You don't, whether you like the carrot or not, they're going to dangle that carrot, and it's the exact same damn carrot for every single person, and they're going to dangle that, and they're going to say, jump. When we tell you to jump, do this for 12 years, and if you do it well enough, we're going to go ahead and put this arbitrary letter over here, tell you you've been a good, obedient little boy. We'll give you this A right here, and we'll put it on this piece of paper, and then we'll tell the world that you're ready to go be a good employee somewhere else, and you'll be a good slave for somebody else.
Fuck.
That's all it is. It's designed to show that you're potentially a good
And
employee.
all of us.
Yes.
All of us are programmed to that process.
Yes.
All of us.
Yep.
Even the freest people that think they're the freest, you are still programmed.
There's still parts where you go back and go.
I cannot wait to have you talk to the guys. You're going to get a lot of questions from all the guys in the Go.
Good. Can't wait.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to fuck their mind up.
That's what it does.
Because
it makes you angry.
Everybody in our program is fed up.
Yeah.
But they're just like, we're fed up, but
I see it all the time. I launched all these.
What do we do?
I launched all these schools, right? And part of it is understanding, like, hey, we've got all of this freedom that's involved here, and people get really, really excited about that word. And again, Socrates says that the beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. So when you and I have the different definition of what freedom means, then we're off to a different start. We think we're off to the same start, but we're off to a different start.
Right.
So we go, hey man, we've got
it needs to go on the board. We need
exactly what it is, exactly what it isn't. So as I launch in my schools, like if people go in and they'll send their inquiries, like they were getting videos directly from me. It was a whole series of videos to watch going, hey, by the way, here's what we are. Here's what we are not. Like
very clear.
Trying to make it as clear as possible.
Yeah.
Right. Because
do not expect that.
That's right. Yeah. We don't care about grades. We're never going to say college prep. The paradox or the irony is, because of the way we operate and because we understand the game of college, it's actually going to be easier to get into college if you decide you want to. Like, it's actually a really easy game to play. It's not a game that most people need to play, but it's actually a really easy game to play. That's kind of the irony, but we're never going to focus on that. Yeah. So if you want that, if you want to hang your hat and tell your friends that your kids have straight A's, and that's where you hang your hat as a parent, if you have, you're in the wrong freaking spot. Right. And we'll say it all day long. We'll vet the parents the best we can.
Like, you beat your chest because your kids have straight A's.
Yes, that's it, man. Then you're in the wrong freaking spot. Even saying that, if we didn't, what we found is if we didn't continue to do parent education throughout, people will slide back into that and they start to have problems with it. Right. I had a lady who was a public school math teacher who came to me. Her son was going to our school. He's 12 years old. She came. She's like, I got to talk to you after school. So we sit down and she starts crying. And she's like, I'm so bad. I handle the finances in our house. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm bankrupting our family. She's a public school math teacher. She's like, I'm not good with numbers, right? And I bankrupted everything. This has been life-changing for my kid. He's doing really well. I see he's more responsible at home, and he's happier. He's got more friends, and he's making a couple $1,000s a month in his business. But he's only at 5th grade math level, and he should be at 6th grade. And I think we're gonna have to pull him. and those stories are like there's a dozen of them.
Oh man. Well, hey, I'm gonna take a leak, and then
Yeah, take a leak.
we're gonna get into. That's a great point, because we're gonna get into what you're doing now in the Acton Academies and the Apogee Strong program.
Cool.
All right, so this it's a lot of information. I hope people's minds are just kind of like.
I hope they are too, man. I hope they are too, and I hope they dive in. I hope they dive into the resources by Gatto, because again, he lays it out extraordinarily
Anything
well.
else about that you would recommend?
Those are the best in terms of the understanding of why school looks the way it does, which I find for a lot of people, like that is the breaking point for them. That's where they'll finally go, okay,
I don't like that.
Okay, I don't like that. I don't like the intent on that, you know. And if college is the thing for them, there's a book called, I wish I could remember the author, but there's a book called Excellent Sheep that I like, that'll lay out the college game pretty well. But those are good resources.
So, and before we get into this, it's not going to get any better.
It will not get better.
The stuff that's happening
Correct.
in the school system is by design, and it's not going to get better.
It's not going to change.
We're not going to fix the public school system.
We will not fix the public school system. You have as much chance. You can go out and, I always tell parents, I applaud their desire to go, to the school board meetings and to go, raise their voice about the agendas that are playing out. And like, I applaud that you want to do something. But it's similar to going, okay, I'm going to go stand out in front of the Vatican with a sign saying, I don't like your theology, and then I'm going to send my kid to the Catholic Church 5 days a week as well. Like, what are you doing? You're not going to change them, and you're still sending them to something you say you're protesting.
Can you imagine
I can't.
If you imagine if every parent who gave a shit just yanked their kid.
Just yanked. But one of the biggest things I get, right, is, well, I mean, other than I don't think I could do it, because they're thinking they have to recreate school at home. So they're thinking I'm not qualified, or homeschool kids are weird, or like some of those other things. But a big part of it is, well, a lot of the households don't have dad there. It's single mom. Yeah. She's working, or
again, bigger plan to the system.
Bigger plan. Or you got both parents. They're both there. They're like, well, we can't get out of here. What are we going to do? Somebody's going to quit their job? I'm like, yeah. Maybe
we've been played.
You might have to sacrifice.
But
Yeah,
we've been
played. We've been played. And it's not your fault that you've been played. It's your fault that once if you don't take steps to start to fix it, then that's it. But yeah, no, nothing's going to change. The agendas are going to keep playing out. The system is still going to be funded the way it's funded. None of that is going to shift. So you either come to terms with that and figure out how to give them an education in spite of their schooling, but you have to understand it's not going to be something that just one washes out the other. You're still going to have all these things that you're going to have to contend with. You're going to have these habits that are being built. So you got to be intentional about that, or you need to do what you can do to put them in a different environment.
Yeah.
You have to.
Okay, so what comes, I guess the first thing that came first is your schools.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call them?
The Acton Academies.
Acton Academies.
Uh-huh.
So explain what that is.
Yeah. So Acton it's a network of.
It started with the MBA.
It started with the MBA program,
and you brought it to school-age kids.
So the Jeff and Laura started building something for their own kids.
Okay.
And that's all they had ever intended to do was just that. One of the families moved down to LA, and they went, oh my gosh, we'd love to do that here too. Can we partner with you somehow? And can we do a franchise? And Jeff and Laura were like, no, we don't want to do franchises. Like, we're not going to do that. But if you want to do it and we can figure out a way to like have a shared platform, then sure, maybe we can do that.
Okay.
And so then they decided.
Is that what it is?
And so that's essentially what it is. It's an affiliate.
It's not a
franchise. It's an affiliate network. So there's a tryout, there's a whole tryout process to even get accepted. There's been about like 18,000 applications to open one at this point, right? So there's this whole process of what it is, what the methodology is, what the pedagogy is, what everybody, kind of agrees to, but then you get to put your own flavor on it depending on your
what you guys do
community.
With Apogee Cedar Park.
And what we do with Apogee Cedar Park. But there's a reason we're also. So I love Acton. I support Acton owners. I've launched multiple Actons. I've helped launch multiple Actons around the world. I help Acton owners every single day, still to this day. What we're doing with Apogee Cedar Park, we're going to be intentionally doing something that is Acton-esque, but we're going to be intentional on
I've seen it.
bringing back the physical, bringing back jiu-jitsu, bringing back intentional mentors. We're bringing that back in, which is something that Acton as a network does not focus on. I did at my campuses. And we're also going to bring back.
It gives that's the beauty of it, because it gives you
the freedom to do that.
Freedom
yep,
to do
exactly.
That. And as you should have the freedom to do it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And I also fully believe and understand and have learned, again, something I mentioned earlier, is if you're going to launch a community in this way, you're going to launch an educational center for young people. Not only do they need that freedom, the chance to explore, it needs to follow the developmental paths, they need to have crazy amounts of responsibility and work that they're tackling. They need to have intentional physical fitness in there. They need to have intentional mentors and opportunities to learn from ninjas in their field. Not only does all that need to be present, there needs to be something for parents to go along a simultaneous path of growth. If that is not there, it is nowhere near as effective. You and I are talking growth mindset all day long.
Yeah.
We're operating this all day long.
Yeah.
Right? Most parents are not in that realm. So if we build something for our young heroes and everything is in that operation of what real education looks like and growth mindset and how to actually accomplish that and how to push forward and be resilient, the physical fitness, why health matters, why eating the right thing, all of these things, and they go home and the conversation's different, we lose. Yeah. There has to be something there where you got the parents on board with that too. There has to be. And that's what we're building with Apogee Cedar Park and the Apogee schools that we're building out.
So give me, just for the people listening, because they're going to be like, I don't understand, because we're also programmed.
Right. You think school needs to look a certain way.
K through 12.
Right. K through 12. Right. It's those grades. 12, right.
This is the grades.
Totally.
This is the way you're taught.
Yeah.
This, writing, reading, arithmetic.
Totally. Yeah. Why is this? What makes it so different?
What is the other way?
Yeah,
Matt.
So let's try to go.
If that's not a good way, then
how do we do this on a group side? Totally. So we got to take development into mind, and we got to try to make it as close to a microcosm of the real world as we possibly can. Okay. All right. It's the best way to describe it. What are they going to be? They're going to be walking into the real world, the quote unquote real world, like how the world actually operates. What are the meta skills you need to do well in the real world, right? There are a few things that you do need to do well. You need to be able to, you need to be able to read, write. You need to be able to speak. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to develop a network. You need to be able to, you need to have physical fitness and health. You need to understand how, what systems are at play and what systems actually work. You need to understand, how to make money, how to provide value. You should understand how to run a household. Like there are certain things that we want. So we need to build those things in during their time on campus. Okay. So looking at a developmental standpoint, that 0 to 8 range really should be play-based. That's what Finland gets right too. It's like, they don't even start until you're 7 or 8. Well, if you're going to come earlier,
when do
fine.
You start?
We had 4 years, 9 months was as young as we would go. That's a specific age.
Okay.
Part of that though is so that we didn't go below that in California. At least if you go below that, you're a preschool and you're automatically inviting the government to come in.
Really?
Yeah. So there was a very specific reason. So every state, you're going to play the game a little differently too, because you want to keep the state you want to keep the government out of it. I don't. No. Yeah, I don't. I'll have to take a look. I'll have to take a look. Yeah. So very play-based early on. I mean, it's really about play. It's about character. It's about choices. Very Montessori-esque. There's choices for quote unquote jobs that they can take on and do, right? But it's very much play-based. You get them having conversations every day, which are going to be short and sweet, but Socratic-based conversations.
So 4 years, 9 months to what?
To about 8-ish.
Really? All one classroom?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Classroom. Whatever you want to call it.
All one studio age. 100%. And they're going to be operating on things together, but they also need opportunities on campus to mix with the older heroes too, right? So as you get older, some of these older heroes, part of their responsibilities and jobs on campus are to go in here too and hang out and play and help facilitate, right? And develop relationships and do some projects and things together too.
So you don't have periods of instruction.
So you have general time blocks.
Okay.
right? General time blocks with options during those time blocks.
So wild,
right? You got general time blocks.
You realize how hard. I mean, maybe I don't know if it is for you, but you realize how hard it is to wrap your head around this.
I do
for the
majority of the population
until
you see it in action, and even when you first see it in action, because you're so programmed, you're like, but still, shouldn't they be sitting down, being quiet, being told what to do? Right? You still go back to that.
And it's just like chaos. There's all kinds of things happening.
It seems like chaos sometimes, right? Because it's like, it's still a really hard thing for people to wrap their minds around. Yeah. So you're allowing for choices to be made. You give them options, right? And people learn to make decisions by making decisions. So you give kids the ability to make decisions. What are
the teachers called?
Guides, right? Because they're not going to lecture ever. There's no lecture.
Wild.
You don't lecture anybody. You inspire them. You get them excited about things. You have conversations. You push back.
How do you tell stories? How do you teach them about history? And
you tell stories, right? And you put them in the situation of being in that person's shoes, and you go, ooh, so like this person, what would you have done? What would you have done here if you had to make this decision that was going to cause this, or you had to make this decision to cause this? What would you do? Why? And you don't worry about where they go from the outcome. Ronald, the Explorer shuttle, right?
Yeah.
Goes up 1986.
Yeah.
I remember watching it in school. I remember sitting there watching that whole thing. Everybody's real excited, and then went up and fucking exploded, and all those people died. Yeah. Right. So one of the favorite launches our kids ever had that we would do, and I did this with some middle schoolers, but I've done it with my own kids too. So we actually show that, right? Like they're back in 1986. And we go, hey, we're going to watch this launch. Goes up, boom, it explodes. All those people die. Then we'll go, okay, here's Ronald Reagan. He's the president at the time. Here's his national address. This is how he addresses the nation. Okay, you are now Ronald Reagan. Do you double NASA's funding so that never happens again? Mm-hmm. Or do you eliminate NASA altogether so that never happens again? Mm. And now you've got to have a conversation, because you go, okay, where do you stand? Who says we double it? We double. Okay. Who says you get rid of it? We say get rid of it. Okay, cool. So you're over here. Let's discuss why. And it starts to force them into thinking, okay, I'm going to think patterns-wise, right?
You guys just did this at Apogee Park talking about war. For war or against war.
Bingo.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, continue.
Bingo. It's that same thing, right? Yeah. And so what you do is you give them a hard decision to make that's age appropriate, right? So if they're 5, we're not necessarily going to...
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's
Socratic method.
It's Socrates' method of basically...
Of inquiry.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all it is, right? All so we're not worried about getting them to a specific outcome. Like that's part of what's different, right? School says...
You're driving them toward the answer.
School says, here, you've got to get this specific answer. This is how you think about this specific thing. Here's what it is. This is not that.
It's not black or white.
It's not black or white. We just want you to have a conversation. We want you to think about it, because you're getting reps in for the real world.
You're creating thinkers, not
creating
workers.
Thinkers. Exactly. So that they get into the real, they're getting reps,
super dangerous, Matt.
They're getting reps.
Yeah.
You learn to throw jabs by throwing a bunch of jabs, right? So that when you're actually in a fight, you know how to throw an effective jab. So you're giving them the reps on thinking through a hard situation, making hard decisions, having to get character involved, having to think and go, okay, if I make this decision, here's what could happen, here's what could happen, here's what could happen.
Order effects of every
what are the third? Yes, exactly. How does this tie into previous decisions I've made? What have really influential and powerful people in history done in a similar situation? How did they make those decisions? What was the opposing side? And what were their points, right? Did they have any points that were valid? You start looking at the world through that kind of lens to make any kind of decision that you're making, right? So we're giving them those kinds of scenarios and those kinds of conversations every single day. And that's where parents are like, okay, but cool, how do we know they learned? How do you put, like, you're not worried about that. You're not worried about a specific, okay, barf this out, write it down. And we feel like that showed learning because they said the right thing when asked a question. When really learning is just the process of being alive and growing and thinking in general. You're always learning. Yeah. You can't help it until you're dead. Like you can't help it, or unless you shut it off in particular. Yeah. Right? So they're having these conversations on a daily basis, and it's age appropriate. So for a 5-year-old, they might not be talking about that kind of scenario, but it might be this, scenario based on a story they're reading. And there's a young man I remember what the story was that we were reading to this group of 5 and 6 year olds, but it was like this young guy was trapped. He's on a log, and it was getting, was racing down a river and he was just holding on to that to stay alive, right? So we built out this scenario of like, okay, cool. So now you're him. You're on this log and you're going down there, and you see on one side of the shore, you've got Batman, and Batman's running along over here, and you got the other side, you got Spider-Man, right? Only one of them can save you. Who's going to save you? I want Batman to save me. Okay. I want Spider-Man to save me. Okay. Why? Cool. And they're excited and they want to have the conversation. They want to give their reasoning and their rationale, right? You can do these kinds of things for every age group. And we're not worried about a black and white answer. We're worried about getting them to think through things. And
there's really no right or wrong.
There's no
answer.
right or wrong that has to be discovered.
There's no pass
and
or fail.
Here's the beauty too. You may be super, super passionate that it's Batman. And you've got all your rationale.
Yeah.
In the process, I'm learning to listen to what you're saying. I'm learning to articulate my point of view, but I'm also learning to take what you're saying and then realize at the end of it, you might still be at Batman. I might still be at Spider-Man, and we can still be friends. We can still go hang out and connect on all these other things. Amazing, right?
Yeah.
Or something else could happen. By the end of it, you could have convinced me with your argument that I'm going to go over here and I'm going to agree with you. Shit, I might have convinced you too. We might completely flip-flop sides and be okay.
Yeah.
One might come over, like, all of those things are possibility. All those things are great because you learn what civil discourse looks like. You learn to take your emotion out of the conversation. You learn to look for evidence, evidence over emotion, right? You actually learn to think. So that's a big part of their day is the conversation, it's the play. As they get older, then you start putting more and more challenges in place. You give them options of various books that are, lean towards heroic thinking, and you have great conversations around those books. You don't read to build out a standardized version of a test. One of the things John Taylor Gatto wrote, he said there's like 168 different ways to read and to process information as you're pulling it out. School, because we teach reading and we teach it specifically how to read to pass a standardized test, you essentially eliminate like 160 of those 168, right? Because you're just showing, so people actually start to only read in ways that will make it so they can regurgitate what they know will be on a test, whether they're consciously doing it or not. Right. They're not actually absorbing the material, thinking through it and go, why did the author write this? What is the context of this? How is this going to play out? They're not actually thinking, right? So as they get older, you incorporate those kind of books. You still have those kind of conversations, and you give them bigger problems to solve. You give them projects that are interesting challenges and projects to solve in the real world. Okay, we have a homeless situation that's here in our society. How are we going to go fix this homeless situation specifically for one person? What can we do? What can we create? How can we bring this, how can we bring this to the community? How can, like, whatever the problem is, you put new problems in front of them every 4 to 6 weeks. You give them an exhibition, like a time period where they're going to have to show kind of their solution to something to somebody. Okay. So that you keep energy high and they go try to solve that problem. And then you're also giving them more and more responsibilities on campus. As they get older, all of those things stay there. Plus, they start doing internships and apprenticeships in the real world in areas they think they want to work.
So okay.
You're just layering in life.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then. You get a kid that, I don't know, maybe it's a kid that's interested in it. Maybe there's a problem. I don't know. How do you attack? You have a guide.
Yeah.
Like, if I was the guide, like, I can do a lot of things. I'm really good at a lot of things.
Totally.
This thing I'm not good at.
Totally.
Kid needs to learn. I'm not saying he needs to.
Yeah.
This particular kid needs to learn algebra.
Okay.
I'm fucking out.
Sure. Totally.
I'm tapping out.
Totally. Yeah.
How do we accomplish that in this program? So
we got to define need first. Who says he needs algebra? If he does.
He needs.
Okay. If he does, if he knows that he needs algebra for where he is going.
How are we helping this kid?
Sure.
Be an algebra whiz?
So one of the things that we forget about human nature is if somebody sees a need for themselves, it's really hard to stop them from getting it if they're an inspired person overall.
That's pretty much, yeah. I can understand that because.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's part of it. So our job is to keep him.
To facilitate that.
To facilitate first of all, is facilitate the inspiration. Okay. Then when he sees the connection, it's going to be really hard to keep him from finding the solutions. Luckily, there's a million different ways to learn basic academia at this point, right? Khan Academy is completely free. You can go get a lecture just like it would be a lecture from a teacher who's standing right in front of you. You can get the same thing. It's just recorded. You can get the exact same thing and work through the problems and figure it out. Like, you can self-educate in that regard.
But now he's wanting to.
But now he wants to because he's excited.
I
because
need this information.
I need this because here's where I want to go with that.
Yeah.
And what you'll find is that
that was kind of leading me to my next thing. So you kind of answered the question with my next thing is how are you integrating the modern day education?
Yeah.
Not schooling.
Yeah.
Modern day education with the things of that shit that's like the fucking internet.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's like how we got it. So internet itself, we talk about, so there's character contracts that come involved with all this. We talk about the internet being the tool that it is, and using it for the tool that it is, and not using it as the weapon that it could be.
Yeah.
Right. And so
everything
is like
can
that.
Be used as
100%.
This can be used as inspire. I can also murder somebody.
I can also kill somebody. Exactly. Right. So you got to get the kids to understand from a character standpoint, and this is where the parents come into, and they got to be on board with this. Here's what we use the computers for, and here's what we don't while we're here. And so if we're going to use it for research, and we're going to make it available to use it for research, like, I mean, it's not overly complicated.
So where are you at on the internet, YouTube, even AI?
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's wild. So what can we use it for?
Yeah.
Like, what can we use it for? People are all worried about school. Well, they're going to have it write their essays. Well, cool. Essays are shit. When do you write an essay? When do you write an essay? Nobody writes it. It actually has screwed up our communication. It's actually screwed up our writing, because what do we have to do? We're going to write an essay, and it's got to be X amount of words, right? Why? If I can make you understand something in 5 words, and those are the 5 words that are powerful, it gets my point across,
Somebody
and it
said
gets
that about
you to
writing a book.
And why would I do it in a fucking 1,000?
There's some quote out there about, because when I wrote my book, I was like, well, how long should it be? And I was like, I can research
what do you need to,
what do I need to say? Because I had a thing to say, and some people, and my book's not long.
Yeah.
It's a 4-hour read. If you're a decent reader, it's a 4-hour read. 8 hours. I think it's 8 hours on the audio book.
Okay.
I could be wrong because I did podcasts in between talking about the chapters. But
Yep.
as I was researching this, but I was researching it from a standpoint of how long does the book need to be for you to gather the information? How many words? What do you need? And there's nothing out there. There was an old author, and I don't remember his name or anything, but the quote was, your book needs to be, it was like basically exactly what it needs to be, and not a word more.
Not a word more.
He's like, and then it went on saying, if you can get your point across in 2 pages, your book is 2 pages.
You're done.
If it takes 200 pages, it takes 200 pages.
Bingo.
He said the problem with and this is old. I don't even know how old this was, but it was decades ago.
Yeah.
He said the problems with modern day authors is they're getting told that it needs to be this, it needs to be that, it needs to be this.
Bingo.
He's like, and what we're doing is we're inflating a bunch of bullshit that doesn't need to be there.
And school. and school. Right? It's got to be X amount of pages. Right. It's got to be X amount of words. It's got to be this long. So you get used to doing all this fluffy language and all this kind of stuff, which is garbage. It actually dilutes the power of your writing, and it screws you up going forward because you never ever write essays again. Yeah. You write ad copy, or you write an email, or you write but you're not writing essays for the sake of writing essays. I mean, it's kind of a joke.
I'm trying to put a white paper on a subject. What would you call that?
Oh, that's a different deal. A research white paper, though, has a very specific format. Yeah. Right? It's got a very specific, and you're still trying to cut the fat on a research white paper. Yeah. There's no difference there. Okay. And same thing in a speech, right? And the purpose, we don't teach kids about the purpose of writing at all, right? It's write this essay because we're saying to write this essay, and you give us a bunch of horse shit, right? So the purpose of writing really is to learn how to think.
The whole thing is just, it really is it boils down to what I'm gathering is it's boiling down, instead of doing it to do it, you're changing everything to do it to think.
Bingo.
Everything
is learning to think, and it's learning to figure out what my gifts are and where I want to go with that, right? Educare, the root word, means to draw out. So we're drawing out the individuality. You want that self-awareness. You gain self-confidence too, because you've actually tried some hard things, and you get exposure to a number of things because you're trying to solve problems in different arenas. And that usually either is okay, that was cool, I solved the problem, but I'm not super excited about that. We put together We put together a city. We 3D printed some of it. We did Legos for some of it. We did cardboard for some of it, and we ran electricity to the whole thing, and we worked together to do that, right? Cool.
Wild.
Right? So cool. That was awesome, and it was learned. And I either got really stoked by that and was like, ooh, this is freaking cool, and I want to go down like a little bit more of a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Or I was like, that was not my thing. Great. Cool to learn both sides.
See,
so then you don't
totally,
focus on that anymore.
If I was a kid, I would have fell in love with
like,
all
that's
of that.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. So if you find out early what you're in love with, well, then the rest of your time should be spent becoming the freaking ninja at that.
And then you can help other kids that find themselves like
Totally.
it as well.
Totally.
All right, so you get a kid. Have you guys done, is this all the way through 12? Like,
Yeah.
I say
All the way through high school. All the way through high school age or whatever. Yes. Totally. Yeah. 100%.
Whatever that is.
Yep. For sure. Whatever that is. That's right.
So what does that look like at that end? What age is that? And
what age do you want it to be?
So are you got kids that are 16 going, I'm done.
Yep.
I've done what I needed to do.
All set. I know what the next step is. I'm ready to rock and roll.
For my life.
Time to rock and roll.
Can you tell me some stories about that?
I mean, as far as what they're doing?
Well, just like, what the end, what.
But that's it, right?
It's so hard.
Isn't that a weird thing?
Because
what's the end of your learning cycle look like, right? So it's not
for that stage, for like the, teenager stage,
right? Because
how do you graduate your academy?
Yeah, you have to be ready. So there's a couple different ways to play the game. If we want to play,
I don't know how to ask the fucking question.
I know, because you start to see it for just the silly. It's
right,
just the game.
Yeah, right.
So there's a couple different ways to go, right? And so every academy will take a look at a little bit of different things depending on the state, depending on what the student wants to go into next.
Yeah.
So some will play the game of, okay, we need to have because they want to go on to a specific college that wants to see a traditional transcript of some sort, right? So that happens. Okay, cool. So we can make a traditional transcript, and the whole idea is that you've got this menu, right? You take it like you and I are eating lunch from a place, and they have a whole menu of things, right?
Yeah.
And so the whole idea for our heroes is they've got a menu of things. They can't just sit and do nothing. They can't sit and do nothing, and then we just go, all right, cool, you're ready to go rock and roll. Like, we want them to get after some stuff, right? Go do some things, try some projects, read a certain amount of books, launch some businesses, have these conversations. But we've got a whole menu of things, and each one of those we have essentially a value that's assigned to it. So as long as you knock out enough points, essentially, you're ready to rock and roll. You may have really loaded all your points into one section of the menu because that became your thing. Mm-hmm. Cool. So that's where all your points are. We just translate that to a specific transcript if somebody needs to see it, and you're good to go. Or you've just earned enough points, and man, we're good. Sign up, like, here you go. What's the next? We're not worried about you checking our boxes.
Yeah.
We're worried about you figuring out how to continue to grow. What's next? Don't be the guy that comes out and I've quote unquote graduated, and now what? No. What's your next phase of growth? Are you going into the workforce? Are you going into an apprenticeship program? Do you want to go to college and you have a reason why and you want to, cool, we'll help you on what that is. And you figured that out at 17? Cool, we'll do it at 17. You figured that out at 18? Great. We're not going to have you, we're not going to have you there if you're 27, right? But that's the whole point, is figuring out where you want to go and then how do you get there to the next step. That's all it is. It's just the next phase. It's the same thing you and I do, because you're not going to be doing the exact same thing at 45 as you are at 41.
So my son decides at 16, he's like, no, I'm going to start my own business. Versus his brother goes, I want to go to college.
Great. Sounds good. And education's wildly personal, man. It's not a standard thing. That's the point. All education is self-education.
And then, so basically your guides or whoever's running the campus facilitates that growth.
How do I facilitate the growth so that they learn who they are and are equipped to go do what they want to do?
Okay.
Not what I say they need to do, not what I say they need to like.
Okay, so let's talk traditionally then.
Okay.
Traditional, you graduate from one of your campuses. Guy wants to go, we were talking about it in the gym.
Yeah.
Guy wants to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Or
go to college.
Wants to go to college.
Yeah.
Talk us through that process.
So you
Because
play.
we're talking about like high school diplomas made up.
Yeah.
Transcripts are
all
whatever,
made up. It's all made up. And there's a game of going into college too, right?
Okay.
And so one of the things that we were talking about is I had a young man who just came on and talked to our home education families. You know, we have families that just home educate. They don't do any of the campus stuff, and we walk them through how to understand all of this process. So ultimately, they don't need us at all, so they can just walk through and do what they want to do, however it looks for their family, right? But we'll bring in guest speakers every once in a while. We
like
brought
the
in
Freak Academy's doing.
like the Freak Academy. That's exactly right. Yeah, and they're getting it faster than most, which is great.
Those kids
They're
are
not
ridiculous.
Those kids are amazing because their
Yes.
parents are leading by example too,
Yeah.
right? And so they know, like, they don't ever need to show up. They've gone through all the stuff. They've showed up to a freaking ton of calls, like religiously, and now they get it. And they don't need me, at all. Anymore. That's the point, right? Is that they don't need me at all to guide them through anything else. Like they've got it now. They figured it out, and they're gonna go. They're always welcome, but they don't need me at this point.
But it's the uncertainty because we're so programmed. We need that. We think we need that.
Feel like we need that support
Yes.
and that exactly. So we brought in this young man who's 17 years old, had far from a traditional. I mean, he did have the traditional high school experience. He went through normal K through 12 school and is the valedictorian of his school.
Okay.
But he also had he spoke at 2 TEDx's. He has spoken around the world. He was one of the youngest people to ever get a deal on Shark Tank for his first business. He's actually franchised 2 businesses at 17. So he's a killer. Kid's a killer. He's a freaking stud. And I first met him as a 10-year-old. I was keynoting an event for 3,000 people, and he was doing the final talk of the day for 3,000 people at 10 and crushed it. Like, the kid's a stud.
Can you say who this kid is?
His name is Jack Bonneau. Bonneau.
Okay.
Absolute.
How old is he now?
Absolute stud. 17.
17 right now.
17 right now. Valedictorian of his high school.
Okay.
And we didn't get into this part on the call because he was on there inspiring the young people, inspiring the parents. He is a brilliant human. You and I would both hire this guy any day of the week, but also, why would we? Because he needs to go run his own shit, right? So
probably can't afford him at this point.
Probably can't afford him. Exactly, dude. Right, because he's crushing it.
Yeah.
He
Good
applied.
for him.
He applied to colleges the traditional way. Just went, here's who I am. Here's my essay. Here's my standardized test score. Here's my valedictorian high school diploma, and he went 1 for 14 on college entrance.
What the fuck?
Right. Again, there's a game involved. So if somebody comes out and they say they want to go,
he was part of the system technically,
and he was absolutely part of the system, right? He did all these other things too, but he was absolutely part of the system, and he did all of the steps that the system said to do.
1 for 14.
1 for 14.
Here we go.
So if you have a college you want to go to, first and foremost, figure out why. Like, what is it that you think you need in college that you're not going to be able to get somewhere else, probably for free? Because almost everything is available to you at this point. Right? Almost everything.
Dude, if I wanted to be, and I've said this for a long time, I said if I want to be a rocket scientist, I could be a rocket scientist with no formal education.
Correct.
The information's already out there.
Correct. It's already there.
Yeah.
So it's not the
if I want to, if this is like, hey, I want to figure this shit out, I want to be able to do this. Yeah. I can do it.
Yeah. College is not the gatekeeper anymore. It's our desire is the gatekeeper.
Right.
Right. We have a desire issue, not a degree issue.
Right.
So if you got the desire, you can go get all that stuff. So let's talk about that. If there's a college there, let's talk about that family. Why? What is it? Like, that's great if you want to do that, but understand why. And what is that going to mean? Are you going to have to take out massive amounts of debt? Let's talk through the actual scenario.
Pass.
Hard pass.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
Right, Mark? Hard pass.
Hard pass.
Yeah.
But let's assume we get to the point where it's like, no, okay, there is a valid reason we want to go here. And it's not something that's automatically an opportunity given, right? So if somebody is, I just got an offer for a 4-year scholarship to go play sports and go do this. Cool, man. Great. Go get it. Go enjoy your 4 years.
But if you have a desire to play sports and you're like team sports and that's your thing.
And that's your thing. Great.
Cool.
Great, man.
Yeah.
Go enjoy the experience. Take 4 years off of life. Go pour in. See what you can do in the sport. Like, that's freaking great. Make sure you don't get indoctrinated along the way. Don't be a moron.
Yep.
Go enjoy it, man. Get at it. But assuming that's not the case and we're just going, okay, we got to find a school. Let's be intentional first about the school that we're going to. Let's figure out what it is and why we want to go there. What is the program that we want to get into? Don't pick a brand name just for the sake of picking a brand name, right? You start to pick a Stanford, a Harvard, a Yale because you've heard that those are the quote unquote elite schools. first of all, that's a myth in and of itself. But you're also lessening your chances of getting in, and you're playing even into a bigger part of a game that a small school is not necessarily going to play. A lot of the professors there are paid to do research. They're paid to publish, and oh yeah, there's kids here too that sometimes we can help, but it's more about our reputation on a lot of this stuff. And there's also this game they have to play to keep up with their U.S. News and World Rankings, to remain quote unquote elite. And part of that is to make sure they reject almost everybody, whether you deserve to be there or not. That was part of this young man's problem, is all 14 schools he applied to are quote unquote elite schools. Well, they have to, by design, keep their acceptance rates at a very low percentage or their ranking gets destroyed. Right,
then
so
they'll become more of a common school.
Then they're more of a common school, and that's more dangerous to the reputation. And the donors won't want to donate as much money.
Holy
right,
shit.
so Stanford, it's like, hey,
like you said, there's a game.
There's a game, and so you've got that layer that's in there, right? And so you take a look, but even if you're, let's say, even if it is Stanford's got like a 5% acceptance rate. You go above that, they're going to screw up their rankings. But Stanford also has a separate application process. You don't have to go the standard route. You can go, but you take a look at each school has a specific game that it's playing, and the game can fluctuate each year too. Okay. So you take a look at Stanford and go, okay, well, they've got a homeschool education route. Maybe I go in as a homeschool student, and instead of 40,000 applications for 5% acceptance, it might be 5,000 applications for like a 25, 30% acceptance. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to actually apply this way. So we're walking these guys through, taking a look at the school and what's the game that they're playing. What are the options there? Do you have to take a standardized test? Is there something that you can substitute for it? Do they not care if there's a standardized, an SAT, ACT? Do they not care if that's there in the first place? Can you go in easier as an adult transfer? A lot of times that's the case, where you can actually go in as an adult transfer. I always tell people it's actually easier to get into a lot of universities without a high school diploma than it is to be the valedictorian. People are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Well, you don't graduate. 16, you start taking junior college classes. A lot of states you can do that for free. Mm-hmm. You do that for 2 years. Now you're 18 with an associate's degree versus 18 as the valedictorian of your high school. And you go in as an adult transfer, and your acceptance rates are normally higher, right? So you go play the game that way, and then you only go for 2 years, right? So you take a look at each school and what the game is that they're playing, and you just give yourself the best chance by applying that particular way. You put together a digital portfolio versus just a transcript, right? So it's a brand of just going. So like, if Gary Vaynerchuk calls you and was like, hey man, I want to come work for you right now. I want to come work for you at Johnny Slicks. Would you hire him? I mean, obviously. Right?
I'd be like, here's the finish line, bro.
It's a done.
Can you get me across the finish line? Let's fucking go.
Let's go. Right? He doesn't have a degree. He has ability that you can clearly see, and he's got a brand around that, like it's a easy.
Which is funny you say that, because I will replace myself within a certain amount of time.
Of course.
It's all planned.
Of course.
To get us across the finish line.
Of course you will. Bingo. Yeah. So it's the same thing. You show the brand of who you are. That's why we have the young guys in Apogee Strong build out this digital portfolio, right? So it's like, here's what I'm doing. Here's my intentionality behind it. Here are all the people that I've worked with. Here's my takeaways from this. Here's what this, like, so you build out that brand, and a lot of times you can use that digital portfolio as a substitute even for transcripts in some places, or you just make up a transcript of all your A's, and you send it in with this digital portfolio too. But you're just playing the game, and then you have to, so you just give yourself the best possible opportunity. There's a very specific way to write the essay, which again, you're talking about what you've done, but you're not doing superfluous language. You get creative, but you want to stay solid to character and tell a good story too. So you give yourself all of these things that are the best possible chance, and then you also understand that there are elements of the game every year that you can't control. It might just be the case that by the time you apply to this school this year, they're all out of spaces for white guys. That's real. Yeah. And by the way, this isn't a racist thing. I mean, that whole system that's a racist way to look at it. But I'm not saying this is just something that white guys get. No, there are years where, depending on we're all out of spaces for Asian girls right now. We're out of spaces for black males right now. We're out of spaces for Indian females right now. We can only have so many right now because of what the population looks like. Like, those are real elements of the game. So you may apply at some point one year, and just by nature of that,
regardless of what
all this other stuff, It's just not going to happen. You also can get ousted because there's X amount of spaces and one was taken up by somebody who fills another need, right? How do you think the grades for every single, highly recruited point guard in America are like always top notch, stellar grades, stellar academic? No, they're a freaking rad point guard. So they're going to jump the line too, right? Because we're recruited. We need a good point guard here. So they're coming in, so they take a space. I might lose my space because Nick Koumalatos has crazy deep pockets and donates, a shit ton of money to this university every single year. And I, academically speaking, probably could have gotten in, but his kid Dimitri is going to get to go because, daddy is Nick. That's real. That's part of it. So understand that sometimes you can do all of the right things, play the game as much as possible, and you still won't necessarily get in. We're just going to give you the best possible chance to play that game for that particular university.
How's your success rate with your people?
Astro-freaking-nomical. Yeah, we don't, easy.
Don't have a problem?
No, at all.
But what's the percentage of people that actually go to college?
That's a really good question, and it's actually something we don't track as a network for a number of reasons. But it's a really good percentage. I know the ones that want to all do. Yeah. But there's a lot that don't, and there's a lot that wait and decide later too. So that's part of the whole tracking too. Is like, why would you?
Either don't go, or two, wait till way later.
Wait till way later. Until it, 100%.
I don't know, maybe even until your 30s.
Yeah, go out and start.
Until you figure out what you really want to do.
Start working. Start
life.
pouring some stuff. Out there, we were talking about Praxis earlier. Go to a program like that. Start working. Go in debt free. Start working. Start making a dent. Take on as much responsibility as you can at a young age when you don't have other responsibilities to take on.
I talk so much trash about college, even though I've got a master's degree.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
I
got graduate degrees too. Same thing. Yep. I know.
It's mind blowing. So real quick. I don't know if people even know this. How did this work? My mom pulled me out of school for homeschool. We moved like every 6 months.
Yeah.
So we did homeschool for a year.
Yeah.
Which means I just didn't go to school.
You didn't do anything. Yeah,
I didn't do
for
anything.
sure. Yeah.
I was off.
Yeah.
And then I went back to school in the 6th grade, but I think I was supposed to be in 7th grade. Got arrested twice, thrown in juvie. Came out of that. They put me in 7th grade. Got in trouble again. I think I got kicked out of that school. And then somehow, my mom's a ninja. I was a straight ninja.
Yeah.
Somehow got me into, which was my 9th grade year. Never went to 8th grade.
Okay. Yeah.
Went into an alternative school.
Yeah.
In my 9th grade year. And, this school was like straight up gangster's paradise school.
For sure.
Like metal detectors. And we're talking, this is in the 90s.
Yep.
Like, this wasn't a thing in public school system like it is now.
Yep.
So this school, metal detectors, barbed wire around it looked like a prison.
Yep. For sure.
The goal there was a year. I had to do a year there. And I was like, I want the fuck out of here. I couldn't get in trouble. And I was a troubled kid. So I literally... I was like, what is the requirements for me to get out of here?
Yeah.
Like, we have to be here for a year. I said, no.
What
are the requirements?
What do I need to knock out within that year?
What do I need to do in that year to let me go? So they told me, I said, okay, so if I did these things, and it was like, you can't get in one fight.
Yeah.
Provoked or not provoked.
Yeah. Yeah.
No fighting.
No fighting. Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking impossible almost,
totally.
Dude.
Totally.
But I navigated it. There were some very intense moments that I fucking moonwalked out of.
For sure.
Especially when they know that. When they know, like, when there's kids, it's like prison.
Oh, yeah.
When they know that you're going to try to get out, and they know that they're in there for 4 years regardless.
That's right.
They don't give a shit.
That's right. It's because I'm going to exhibit my power. I'm going to bring you down.
Yeah. So, but I navigated it, and I don't even remember what it was, but I fucking went all in, and I got out in 6 months. Went to regular high school. So I went to regular high school for 6 months, the second half of my 9th grade year, did my 10th grade year. And then there's a long story, but I basically at 10th grade, I realized this is pointless for me. I was making a ton of money outside. I was making like, I don't know, anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 a week.
Yep.
Cash.
Yep.
as a 16-year-old.
Yep.
Told my mom, I said, I'm not going back.
Yep.
Went and got my GED.
Yep.
Good test. Done.
I'm all set.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways. So
Yeah.
So I say all that just because I don't even know where I was
what,
going.
But
it was
here's
like it just wasn't required, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I went to community college because I needed to do it to join the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Because I had a GED.
Yep.
But college superseded a GED. So one semester at college, I think it took like underwater basket weaving.
Yeah, just
Microsoft
garbage.
Excel.
Yeah, totally.
This was like 1998. Whatever bullshit was in there. I think I took a psych class, but that superseded that, and that was done. And then I kept going to school, but I really didn't. And my grades were always shit, man.
Yeah.
CD students.
Yeah.
I didn't make almost straight A's until college.
Yeah.
Until real college.
Mm-hmm.
Until I went to Full Sail
mm-hmm.
and started doing digital cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
Was all in.
Yeah, because you like it.
And then that was even a struggle because I was doing the job in real life. This was years ago before I started hiring people. I was doing it all myself with my wife, who went there as well and is a film school grad.
Yep.
So we were just like passionately into it, learning from YouTube, learning from different classes online, and it was like you said something about it before. It was like I was actually doing the job.
Yeah.
So school sometimes was difficult because
it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yep.
And I was trying to explain that. So there was rub there.
Yep.
Where I really shined was the master's program for business leadership.
You were all in at that point, ready to
I have
rock
a
and roll.
master's in business and leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I was like, oh, this is is my jam.
Yeah, for sure.
This is where I'm in.
Yeah. And then you can crush it.
And
That's all.
Completely. I got a damn near fucking 4.0. I think it was a 4.99 GPA.
Dude, that's all you need. So
in my 30s.
Exactly. So it's all about the inspiration and tying it to what you actually want to do, for knowing who that person is and where they want to go. Yeah. Even in your scenario in high school, right? You had a goal.
Yeah.
You knew it was stupid, the stuff you were going to have to do, but you're like, shit, I got a goal. And you rocked it out in 6 months, right? So the same thing happens for students, even if they do need academia, like in a traditional sense, to get to a certain thing. I've seen students do the entire like K through 12 curriculum, so to speak, up through like calculus. I've seen them do that entire thing for all quote unquote subjects, like 3 years.
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
Cut out all the standing in line, sit up, stand down, show up, all this.
All that
bullshit.
because they just rock it out and they go, okay, here's what I need to do and here's when I need to do it.
I'm so stoked for my son's life.
Absolutely.
What his life is going to look like compared to everybody else.
Absolutely.
Or even my daughter's lives.
100%. And this is where part where people get upset about it, but I want people to understand it's not a knock on them, but our kids who don't have to go through this system, that you parents went to that turned out fine. Our kids that go outside of that.
And by the way, remember, fine is not a good.
Fine sucks.
It's not
it's
a good
4-letter F word.
Yeah.
Right. Our kids are going to have complete dominion.
Yeah.
Over all of it.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way.
Yeah.
They're just going to be so much more capable and self-aware and self-confident and able to adapt to whatever is coming up, because that's adaptation's a big part too, being able to learn and unlearn,
So a parent listens to this, okay, to wrap a lot of this up, and I want to get into the Apogee Strong program after, but to wrap this up, a parent listens to this and be like, I'm in, I don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
But like, I agree. 'Cause I've got clients that even said, they're like, I'm on the fence, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I'm ready to rip my kids out of school.
Yeah.
Like, I can't handle it anymore.
Yep.
They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And their thought process is like your wife's.
Yep.
Back in the
Yep.
day.
Yep.
All right, so we got a homeschool. Now I got to come to the teacher. I got to do this program.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
I know my kids need to get pulled out of public school.
Yeah.
I can't afford private school, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So they're gonna home educate, right? So they're not gonna go the private.
Or what are
so you've got
what's the options?
You've got those options. You can take a look and go, okay, is there something? Again, I'm not I'm not directly affiliated with the Acton Academies anymore, other than helping because I have so many friends there. We're building out the Apogee Strong version, which is, again, similar, but with some of the other intentionality around the physicality and all that stuff that we're talking, right? So, but if you've got an Acton Academy near you, it is worth taking a look, right, to see what's going on. You can check that through just actonacademy.org. And see if there's something. Step one, see if something is even around you, and check it out and see if that's even there, right? So see if that's an option. If you are interested in potentially launching something of your own, or you have people in your community that are like, hey man, we're kind of feeling like we want to launch something of our own, you can take a look at the application process through Acton. You can reach out to what we're doing through Apogee Strong and see if you want to take a look at affiliating there and launching something from that side. If you are like, hey, there's not any of that stuff there, I can't afford this, I can't take the time to do this, we're going to go ahead and just figure out how to home educate. That in of itself is the most simple way to go about it. It's hard to build out a school program. Yeah, it's hard. Like, you're going to take on something that's pretty big, and you're going to need a lot of good people involved in that, and a lot of families that are like-minded and ready to rock and roll. Yeah. Right, and very worth it if you want to do that. And I'm glad to walk people through that. You know, if they want to partner with us on what that looks like, I'm glad to help people walk through that. If you're just going to home educate, you've got so many options. There's the first thing I always tell people is reading is the hack. Reading is the hack. Eliminate distractions, meaning eliminate the fucking video games, like, as much as you can, especially early on.
It's a whole separate conversation.
That's a whole separate conversation, and people get really upset about that too. But
I don't give a shit.
But I don't care either.
Yeah.
Get rid of unplug. Get rid of those distractions. Get rid of, the television, the endless YouTube, the endless, I'm not saying you can't use any of those. I'm saying, make sure they're not the dominant thing. Let's get reading to be something that's exciting again, because that's the ultimate hack. And it's not reading to regurgitate. It's reading to get involved in heroic thinking. It's so that you can have those conversations like we were talking about, where you can go, ooh, what would you have done if you were Pip, right? Yeah. Dive into the classics and what would your decision have been? How would what do you think is going to happen because of, have those conversations with your kid, right? Get excited about that. So reading is the ultimate hack. And that's part of what parents don't want to hear too, is the best way to perpetuate your child's education is to increase your own and bring them along with you.
If you're ready to rip them out, then it's time to take ownership.
It's time to take ownership. Yeah. That means you better be growing too. Mm-hmm. You better be working on something too.
And I think with our people in the Agoge, I think that's part of the natural thing is they are growing as people.
They're growing. Yes.
They're starting to, light bulbs are coming on.
Bingo.
They're taking control, thinking of their own life, their own physical fitness, which is, again, like we said, a gateway drug. Yep. And now it transfers to their wife, to their kids, and they're like, oh, we're ripping all this apart.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because that just becomes the norm, right? It becomes the baseline. Growth is just the baseline here for our family. Yeah. That's all it is. And it's, again,
what do we do? Grow.
That's it. But it's logical, man. And if you're leading by example, I use this example for people. I said, do your kids speak Chinese? No, my kid, they don't speak Chinese. Why don't your kids speak Chinese? We don't speak Chinese. Cool. Sweet. It's that easy. Now substitute anything that you do or do not do.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah. If growth and
we don't need that, because we don't need that.
We don't need it. Yeah. And so if growth and big conversations and taking on responsibility and helping other people and making sure that we're all checking with each other and staying inspired and looking for our gifts and looking to, if that's just the norm, the status quo in our house, we're all going to be okay. Yeah. That's the hardest part for parents, is they don't want to grow. They want to see their kids grow. They don't want to grow. So they're not leading by example. So there's a hypocrisy there. So their kids don't follow suit, right? So get back to where you're going to grow. You got to have a mission involved. We're going to have conversations. We're going to read. We're going to make reading fun again. We're going to take a look at, how do we serve in our community? What kind of roles and responsibilities can we take on there? And how do I take my kids along with me? We're going to look at responsibilities around the house, chores, opportunities for them to work around the house. We're going to take opportunities for them to get experiences. There's, I can give you an academic project around jiu-jitsu, or you can go get on the mat and do jiu-jitsu. Which one actually makes you good at jiu-jitsu? The doing, right? So look for experiences. What experiences can we get for our kids?
You also opened up a thing for me, because I think people would be surprised that if in their area, if they looked, there's like-minded people in similar situations.
For sure.
And you brought up the idea of, not the idea, I guess you guys do this, is a co-op.
Yep.
So
bingo.
Now
you find the families that are thinking the same way.
And then you guys develop your own co-op.
And you have different, and each family probably has a different set of skills that they can bring in and create, you know, something fun for the kids to learn and projects
and
for them to take on.
To where like, and based off of where the family is, like, hey, I can contribute this month to the co-op a month for my kid.
Bingo.
Everybody puts a little bit in. And then now you're essentially building your own.
You're starting to build your own thing. That's right. Take control of it yourself.
You're building
and
a
adapt
tribe
as you go. You're building a tribe. That's all. It's all working on these experiences together, right? That's it. If you're putting in all of that and eliminating the distractions, what else do you want? If you want to add some sort of academia at some point, you can. All the resources are there to do it. I mean, Khan Academy is completely freaking free and 3 times as much work.
I didn't even know about it.
It's completely free. 3 times as much academic. I know Sal Khan, well, good dude. But it's overkill. Like the subjects, it's 3 times as much as you would do in a public school. It's 3 times as much work, but it's there,
it's all out
and it's
there.
Available, and it's free.
Amazing.
So if you need to, you know, you want to put that in there, then put it in there.
All right. So last thing before we go, we eat some food. Apogee Strong.
Yes, sir.
How did that come about? What is it?
Yeah. So Timmy and I were, Tim Kennedy is my business partner on this, and we're putting together, you know, we're talking about
Did
these.
you reach out
schools.
to him or did he find you?
I reached out to him.
Okay.
Yeah, I reached out to him. So he and I had met years ago, but hadn't developed a super close friendship, but we had met years ago through the fight game. And I reached out and just went, hey man, here's what I'm doing with the schools. And from what I understand, you want to launch a school too. And he's like, yeah, I absolutely do. I'm like, okay, well, let's go.
So you heard.
I knew he wanted to do that.
Okay.
You know, and I said, here's, you know, we met long ago, but we've also got mutual friends. We're in the same circles. And I know kind of where you want to go. And I think you and I think a lot alike about a lot of this stuff. So let's get this school rocking and rolling. So we started pushing to launch Apogee Cedar Park, getting all that going. I said, well, we both went, by the way, we have great men in our freaking network. Yeah. We need to do more than just build these schools. Like we have an opportunity right now, fire aim ready. We both have other things going on. We have other businesses we're running.
Welcome to the internet.
Right? But welcome to the internet. Let's use the power of that and let's support, you know, young men that we can't touch physically with the businesses that we're building physically. Right. So what if we put something out there where we invite our friends and, you know, these male mentors to come in and pour into these young men, and we give these guys kind of a roadmap to figure out who they are, to go experience, you know, all of these experiences, books to read, conversations to have, experiences to take on. They build out that digital portfolio that, like we were talking about, can get you into college or get you a job or whatever that looks like. What if we put all that out there that we know is going to work? We invite them to come along. We put them in a private platform, and we start having these conversations every single week with amazing men.
It's a year long.
Let's see what happens.
Initially
a year long. If they pour in and they put out for that entire 12 months, they stay with us. Stay with us in perpetuity as long as they want.
$1,000 for a year.
$1,000 for a year until you're done, and then you stay in for free.
And if you can't afford $1,000,
Apogee Strong Foundation.
Which we're a donor of.
It's exactly what I was going to say. It's a huge. So like you yourself have put young men through this program.
My own nephew's in there. We did the Squire program. And then I was like, okay, Squire's amazing. Yep. I bought off on it.
Bingo.
We're running 3 here a year.
Bingo. And Apogee Strong Foundation, the last one we had here. Apogee Strong Foundation funded like 3 of them.
Yeah.
3 fathers and sons.
It's a great start.
Yep.
That's like, I feel like, and that's what we were talking about in the gym. Squire program, you come to the Squire program, you get a seat at the table of manhood.
Yes.
You're not a man.
Yep.
But you get a seat at the table to start learn.
Yep.
I feel like your program is the next step.
Yep.
It's like the continuing education of that day.
For sure.
And it was never designed by that. It's not designed by two. It's designed by 2 different people.
It just makes sense.
It just makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, and we're all in the same network.
We're all in the same thing. And we're all, so, I mean, but that's what's cool, man, is like, you know, we know all these same guys and everybody's on this mission together. And so we're all down to like, how can I help you? Yeah. How can I help you? Because we're just perpetuating the mission. Some people are going to like to listen to you and talk with you more than they're going to want to talk to me or Tim, and vice versa. Cool. Sounds good. Whatever.
Just do it.
Just do it. And let's all go here together, right? Because we're all on the same mission. So yeah, these guys can stay in perpetuity for free at that point.
Yeah. And they're still learning, but they're more mentors to the.
And then they take on extra responsibility. So they start helping to mentor some of the other young men that are in there. Yeah. And we start helping them build out their own business. You were just on a podcast of one of our young men that's been in there for almost 2 years at this point, right? He's building out his brand around this podcast, and he's freaking crushing it, getting after it. It's freaking fantastic. Like he had you on, then he had like Anthony Trucks on, and he's had like he's just got John Richards coming on, Navy SEAL coming on. Like he's freaking crushing it.
I said publicly, I said, what if this kid can maintain this?
Yes,
if he maintains this positive support network in his life. Watch what this kid is in 10 years.
Guaranteed.
Compared to other people.
It's a guarantee.
Yeah.
Again, it's that 1 degree separation of taking off. And he's way hell over here.
Well, dude, thank you so much. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, if somebody's struggling, can they reach out to you?
Please.
Okay.
Matt at apogeestrong.com.
There you go. Reach out, have a question. Yeah.
Yep.
Guys, if you listen to this, if you watch this, fucking please share it.
Yeah.
Like this needs to be, I mean, I've got some rad ass podcasts, some rad ass videos out there, but man, this episode needs to be my #1 episode on this podcast. Yeah. It like, if you really want to change shit, you want to change the fabric of our country, it starts at the bottom.
Yep.
And it starts with these kids, and it starts with our kids. Please share this. Tag him, tag myself. Give a thumbs up. Drop us a comment in the review. Email Matt. Check out Apogee Strong and what they're doing over there. And Matt, thanks so much, man.
Honor's always mine, brother.
This was killer. Absolutely killer. Hey guys, you know the deal. Never quit, never surrender. Always forward. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.